My Marvel superhero girlfriend, greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 326, Gwen Chick, Spider Hug Bag. Then let's all change our identities together, Nian mused. Changing identities is actually quite simple. Even names don't need to be changed. Simply have the AI, Alice, delete their previous profile and replace it with a completely new and complete identity. With Alice's AI, it's guaranteed to be accurate and verified in the National Intelligence Database. After breakfast, Nian felt like he'd eaten his entire lunch, nearly suffocating, and let out a slow sigh. Wanda immediately stepped forward, her small hands holding a white napkin, carefully wiping the grease from the corners of his mouth. Touching his swollen belly, Nian said, "Auntie, Wanda, I need to go out for a bit." "You want to see Gwen, right?" Diana glanced at him and said bluntly. "As expected of my aunt, you can't hide anything from me." Nian stood up, pretending to hug Gwen's aunt. As the maid, Wanda, watched from beside her, Diana's face sternly clung to his claws. "Go quickly. That child still doesn't know you've awakened. She's been coming to see you every weekend for the past 3 years, rain or shine. Lately, there's been some major changes happening in her former alliance." "I know," Nian nodded earnestly, his mind flashing back to the image of the short-haired figure who always clung to him. This was the first time they'd been apart for so long since they'd met in elementary school. He really missed her. Diana softly reminded him, "She's attending Columbia University in New York. Since it's a non-weekend, she should be in class at the academy." "New York. Wanda, open the door for me." Nian snapped her fingers. Wanda immediately stepped forward and placed a 2-finger ring on the little girl's hand. In the morning, the bell rang. Students streamed out of the entrances of the various Columbia colleges, some clutching books, others chatting about academics and what they were having for lunch. When a short-haired girl, clutching a book, emerged from the college entrance, many students cast admiring glances at her. Gwen Stacy, once known as Columbia's twin beauties alongside Kara Danvers, a year younger than her, was not only beautiful and charming, but also enrolled in several demanding master's programs simultaneously. After Kara Danvers requested a 3-month leave of absence, Gwen was the only figure to be seen at the college. She wore a white uniform that barely concealed her roundness and bulk, a black dress underneath, and her pair of shiny black stockings shone softly in the sunlight, her delicate feet tapping. Of course, most of them only glared from afar, as failed suitors and those on the verge of failure. Just 2 days ago, Gwen seemed to be in a bad mood. A freshman had just flirted with her, and after she rejected him outright, the freshman even resorted to using his family background to forcefully grab her wrist. Later, the freshman didn't even touch the opponent's hand. He was thrown over the shoulder, breaking several bones and severely spraining his wrist. Afterward, the college expelled the freshman. It was only then that students from Columbia and surrounding institutions learned that it wasn't just Professor Dr. Banner who was protecting Gwen at the college. Future Chronicle, a company with a nominal board membership with Columbia, was behind the company. That's right, Future Chronicle. Future Chronicle has grown rapidly over the past 3 years, releasing and expanding numerous cutting-edge technologies and products, including but not limited to nanotechnology, global translation, prosthetics, biogenetics, terminal illness treatments, new energy sources, intelligent networks, spacecraft, and more. Its rapid development has made it a third-largest industrial powerhouse, alongside Stark Industries and Wayne Industries. Its industry-leading salary packages and excellent career advancement system are enough to make graduates from prestigious universities scramble for it. Its connections are considered top-tier both on and off campus. Gwen, already exceptional in every way, was hailed as a true flower of the mountain. Many students could only shake their heads in dismay upon seeing her, feeling the harsh disparity in reality. And against this backdrop and atmosphere, some eagle-eyed students suddenly noticed a dark-haired boy suddenly descending the steps at the academy's entrance, heading straight for the lone figure. He approached the short-haired girl clutching a book. The boy, seemingly barely a man, blocked the boy's path with a frivolous grin. He. Girl, I'm attracted to you. Be my woman. Outside the academy's entrance, the sun shone brightly. Suddenly, the steps were silent, as if a cold wind from hell swept past. The surrounding students stopped in their tracks, stunned, nearly falling to the ground at the boy's words. Where did this kid get such confidence? The short-haired girl in the middle of the steps also stopped. Gwen's jewel-like blue eyes shot up in surprise, staring at the boy standing before her, smiling at her. The book in her hands clattered to the ground. Some of the surrounding students, watching this scene, were too frightened to watch. It was over. Gwen was about to strike. No one knew. Two invisible yet similar energies were now inextricably linked, like a spider web. Gwen covered her mouth with her hand to prevent a sound, her red eyes already glistening with tears, a single droplet of water trickling down her face. The next moment, under the incredulous gaze of the students, her short blonde hair and black skirt swaying gently, Gwen flung her arms forward, swiftly leaping into the arms of the black-haired boy, her arms tightly wrapped around his neck. Nian couldn't help but stumble back a few steps before steadying himself, both palms simultaneously cupping his pert, rounded buttocks. You've grown taller. Almost taller than me, Nian whispered, rubbing his chin against the other soft, fragrant blonde hair. Not even 1.7 meters yet. Gwen suppressed her emotions, her delicate body trembling, a faint sob. Everyone is watching, why don't you get down first? Nian said with a smile. No. Gwen looked like a mother spider and a little sloth, her petite body hanging on Nian without caring about other people's eyes. Well, okay. Nian held Gwen in his arms, ignoring the strange looks around him, and walked towards the school gate. On the way to the school gate, Nian weighed the girl with both hands and asked curiously, have you gained weight? You feel a little heavier. No. Hearing this, Gwen lowered her head and bit Nian's neck. Nian took a breath of cold air. Naturally, his body of steel didn't hurt. But, secretly using his tongue? This is too much? Chapter 327 Gwen Wants to Die, Current State of the Alliance. Walking out of Columbia University's main entrance. Gwen, is it time to come down? Nian gently patted the fiery body hanging from his body like a spider sack with his right hand, only to have his palm bounced back by the elastic, round buttocks. Two long, well-proportioned legs, clad in shiny black stockings, wrapped around his waist and thighs, swaying in time with the muscles of her body as she walked. Her delicate, beautiful face beneath her short blonde hair seemed to gradually realize the shame of her overly bold behavior at school, a blush buried in her chest. In the sun, a wisp of white steam curled from the small head, a mature body no longer capable of being described as girlish. She was clearly more intelligent, mature, and more feminine than before, yet she still had the same sensitive and shy girlish air. Nian couldn't help but smile. After 3 years apart, he finally noticed how adorable the childhood sweetheart he had long considered a brother was. Gwen, in Nian's arms, visibly hesitated, but ultimately puffed out her cheeks and tossed her brilliant golden hair. I don't want to get down. She breathed in the familiar, sunny scent of the young man, tightly embracing the body that often appeared in her indescribable dreams, as if afraid she'd lose it all over again if she let go. Shame on her, even if others saw her as unsatisfied. Anyway, there was no way she was going to let go today, Miss Gwen, righteously so. Then hold on tight. Nian didn't try to persuade Gwen to get down. He glanced around, then embraced her and walked into a deserted alley. The sunlight was obscured by the shadows cast by the houses on either side, making it a bit cooler. Nian supported Gwen's body with one hand, raising his free right hand to reach for her two slightly squashed breasts. Hey, hey, hey. Gwen, who had been a bit willful just a moment ago, opened her sapphire eyes wide, her eyes still sparkling with water, clear and shy. She bit her lower lip and said pitifully, Nian, you don't want to be here. You think too much? Seeing no one around, Nian grasped the necklace pendant around his neck with his free hand. A cloud of blue light suddenly enveloped him and Gwen. At the same time, all the surveillance cameras in the surrounding area sparked, and all the footage within the past 10 minutes was intercepted and deleted. In Queens, New York. At the headquarters of Future Chronicle, many elites in suits and ties, with slicked back hair, entered and exited the luxurious and spacious main entrance. The overall appearance of the company's main office building remained unchanged from 3 years ago. However, Future Chronicle's private industry, Corporate territory, employees, industry background, and influence within the industry have increased by more than 3 times. Future Chronicle is now one of the world's 3 largest industrial giants, on par with Stark Industries and Wayne Industries. In the technology sector, there's even a blazing trend of surpassing Stark Industries. Of course, the tech company the Fantastic Four work for has been a dark horse over the past 3 years. At this moment, on the very top floor of Future Chronicle, a floor no one except for Headmaster Alice has reached in the past 3 years, a cloud of blue light and mist emanating. A young man and a slightly older girl suddenly appeared on the soft blanket-covered floor. Is this the top floor office of Future Chronicle? Gwen poked her intelligent and lovely head from Nian's chest, gazing at the luxurious suite, unchanged from 3 years ago, the large curtains on the floor-to-ceiling windows remaining closed. Yes, I thought I'd stop by to check it out, Nian said before he could finish. Gwen's face suddenly came incredibly close to Nian's, their noses gently touching, a soft, gentle touch spreading across the corners of his lips. The medium delivered autonomously. Nian was stunned, already in spider mode, caught off guard by Gwen's initiative. She had been so timid just now in the alley, or perhaps, could Gwen be more true to her nature and heart indoors? With a thud, Nian fell back onto the leather sofa. Gwen perched atop him, maintaining the same embrace from the beginning. Gwen, wait a minute. Nian said, as if suddenly remembering something. I can't wait. Gwen's eyes were hazy, her tongue steaming as her mouth bit the raised hem of her uniform. At that moment, the bathroom door to the top floor office suddenly opened. A crimson-colored girl in a maid outfit, holding a wet orange kitten in a towel, stepped out, then quickly stopped, gazing at the 2 people on the sofa. Wanda's rosy eyes froze for a moment, but with the utmost care and skill of a maid, she quickly took a breath. Master, I'll take Xiao Wang back first. You go ahead. Meow, Xiao Wang chirped in agreement, wagging his furry tail. On the sofa, Gwen, usually lithe and flexible, froze. Watching Wanda turn and leave, she leaped several meters from Nian's grasp. 5 minutes later. Miss Gwen, your coffee. Wanda placed the brewed coffee delicately on the table. Thank you. Sitting upright on the sofa, her short hair and clothes neatly arranged, Gwen nodded gracefully in thanks and took the cup in her hands. She truly had the air of a talented woman. After Wanda turned and left, Gwen lowered her head, her eyes dull, as if she were out of her mind. Gwen, are you all right? Nian whispered, sitting on the sofa nearby. Don't talk to me for a while. I need some alone time. Gwen said weakly. To show such unrestrained desire in the presence of the maid, Gwen wanted to punch herself. After finishing her coffee, Gwen finally put the matter behind her, and the tense atmosphere eased. Gwen, I've heard a little about your alliance, Nian said. The Avengers. Gwen's eyes dimmed, she set down her empty cup, and sighed softly. 2 days before Nian's death, a global event occurred on Earth. The Avengers were divided over a treaty restricting superheroes. Many heroes within the Avengers disagreed. Ultimately, the Avengers split in 2. One side, led by Iron Man, agreed to sign the treaty, while the other, led by Captain America, refused to sign. The treaty was merely the catalyst. The primary cause was the Winter Soldier, a Hydra figure. The Winter Soldier was suspected of being responsible for the deaths of Iron Man's father and Black Panther's father. Captain America, a comrade of the Winter Soldier, insisted he was merely a brainwashed tool and wanted to protect him to the death. Consequently, over the dispute over the treaty and the Winter Soldier, the 2 factions of the Avengers engaged in a civil war at a private New York airport. The winner or loser was irrelevant. The important thing was that the Avengers were severely damaged after that battle. Clearly, the entire Avengers were the loser. Chapter 328, where the female super is going, the strongest, thanks to the leader of Nian 012. 2 days ago, the divided Avengers engaged in a transcendental civil war at the airport. The compact faction, led by Iron Man, consisted of War Machine, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Black Widow. The liberal faction, led by Captain America, consisted of Deadpool, Hawkeye, Falcon, and Ant-Man. Thor, the god of thunder, was in Asgard and did not descend to join the war. The Hulk, always the king of civil war, also did not participate, but privately opted to sign the compact. Spider-Woman, having completed her internship, withdrew from the Avengers a day early and did not participate in the battle. Following the Civil War, The faction led by Captain America became wanted criminals worldwide, their whereabouts unknown. Currently, Iron Man's faction remains the only Avenger. Black Panther is not yet a member, War Machine is considered a semi-military and semi-hero, and Spider-Man has not officially joined. Therefore, the Avengers are now essentially defunct. Who is Spider-Man? Nian looked at Gwen in confusion. Have you forgotten? Gwen reminded her. You saw him the night of my coming-of-age birthday. So it was him. A small boy flashed through Nian's mind. Gwen's cousin from Queens, New York, Peter Parker. He's only in high school now. Gwen snorted slightly in dissatisfaction. I wonder when Mr. Stark discovered he also has spider gene abilities. After I quit the Avengers, he immediately drafted him in. Didn't he also draft you in when you were in high school? Nian laughed. That's different, Gwen said worriedly. My cousin always wants to be a great superhero, just like I used to be. But you know, he's still young, and that kind of enthusiasm can make him more prone to bad things and danger. Didn't you save me time and time again back then? Gwen rested her head gently on Nian's shoulder. Nian teased, no way, you were the one chasing me the first time. Who knew that perverts wearing armored dresses and carrying huge swords would appear at night? Gwen stuck out her tongue. The two recalled the chase and misunderstanding on the rooftop, and couldn't help but smile. Nian paused for a moment. Don't worry. I'll have Alice keep an eye on him. He'll be safe. Yet. Gwen closed her eyes, her tiny eyelashes fluttering softly. She rested her head on Nian's head in reassurance, then murmured with a complex expression, if only you could wake up 3 days earlier. Kara. Nian understood Gwen's meaning. The Avengers hadn't just been experiencing a major internal turmoil in recent days. The Justice League had already assembled its current members 3 days ago and boarded Kryptonian fighter jets to attack Apocalypse. This included Supergirl Kara. Nian also knew that Guan Luo had accompanied them on the expedition, acting as a guide for half the universe. Waking up after 3 years, the world had changed dramatically. Is this the so-called post-heroic era? The Avengers were torn apart by internal strife, and the Justice League went out on their own. Come with me, let's go see a place. Nian took a deep breath and took Gwen's hand. Elemental dimension. Within it was a primordial, chaotic universe. Nian, carrying Gwen in a princess-like embrace, a dark red cloak of magical levitation fluttering behind his shoulders, emerged and remained suspended. Gwen's eyes widened in surprise. Darkness, like a moving star, emerged. A giant starfish, as vast as a mountain, floated out ahead. Its body was a dazzling array, and in its center sat a single, crystalline eye, its pupil reflecting both of them like a mirror. Nian, I unilaterally declare that you are the most miraculous and unique being I have ever encountered in all my years of wandering the universe. The giant starfish, devoid of a mouth or nose, gazed at Nian with its single eye, exclaiming in wonder, I never imagined you could be resurrected like that. Compared to me, you're a true monster. Calling me a monster is a bit much, Nian grumbled, then addressed Gwen, let me introduce you. It's Starlo, a friend of Little Emperor Mother and the original form from which Canlo split. Hello, big starfish, Gwen waved. How many girlfriends do you have, and all of them possess extraordinary abilities? Starlo asked Nian in a private telepathic message. Nian remained calm and went straight to the point. Starlo, I've come to confirm with you whether you can sense the current location of Guan Luo's clone. Although the metaverse is relatively independent of the outside world, each time the metaverse emperor opens the cat's mouth, the metaverse establishes a certain connection with the outside world, and Guan Luo's clone shares information with Starlo's original self. Starlo responded in a telepathic message, the last time I sensed Guan Luo's location was in outer space, a million light-years from Earth. That was the first day of the Justice League's expedition. 2 days have passed, and the Kryptonian ship has leaped countless light-years. At such a great distance, even my clone would struggle to re-establish intelligence, let alone a communicator. Unable to re-establish contact, which means unable to confirm the location. Nian frowned. But one thing is certain, Starlo said solemnly, they are moving ever further away from Earth and ever closer to Apocalypse. According to their plan, they expect to reach their destination in a month to a month and a half. Is Apocalypse so far away? Nian was startled. His soul had also followed his deceased body, traveling to various civilizations throughout the universe over the past 3 years, broadening his knowledge and perspective on the extraterrestrial worlds. With the superior performance of a Kryptonian spacecraft, it would take less than 2 days to reach the Nova civilization in the heart of the Milky Way from Earth. Very far, unimaginably far. Starro's mind was still shrouded in shock. According to the Justice League's long-term calculations, Apocalypse is located at the edge of the current universe. It's far away from the 9 realms surrounding the World Tree, a cosmic boundary not even the gods have ever reached. Without the sonic boom channel opened by the Mother Box, ordinary civilizations' ships are simply incapable of reaching it. Only fighters built by top civilizations like Krypton have a slight chance of reaching it. And this is only possible if the superhero Cyborg, who possesses certain Apocalypse technology, continuously calculates and adjusts the jump direction while the ship is in motion. Nian and Gwen exchanged a glance. After listening to Starro's words, they realized the absurd vastness of the universe. Even more bizarre was the fact. Apocalypse was unexpectedly located at the edge of the universe, where civilization could not naturally develop. It was as if even the planet itself came from another dimension. Nian was troubled by the fact that even Asgard's Rainbow Bridge might be inaccessible. Moreover, Cyborg, untransformed by the Mother Box, couldn't predict Apocalypse's true location, and the Space Stone was powerless. Nian remained silent, his eyes filled with worry. He was the only person on Earth with actual combat experience against Apocalypse. 3 years ago, the wisdom of Apocalypse, the power of Krypton, the ability of a demigod, and the aid of spider genes merged. Nian, having achieved Trinity perfection, had once delivered a punch to the sonic boom tunnel. He could vaguely sense that Darkseid, the leader of Apocalypse, had survived that blow. Trinity was Nian's most powerful and accomplished form to date, one of the most powerful and accomplished forms he had ever possessed. Chapter 329, Kexi, Nian's changes. Being able to survive a blow from his Trinity mode demonstrates Darkseid's terrifying power. Nian worried about Supergirl Kara, accompanying the Justice League. The seemingly fragile but in fact incredibly powerful, yet also thoughtful and playful, girl. Gwen's crystalline sapphire eyes reflected Nian's face. Her snow-white arms wrapped around his neck, and she soothed him softly. Nian, there's no rush. We have at least a month to find a way to reconnect with Karen and the others. That's the only way now, Nian nodded. He was resurrected too late, so some things could only be taken one step at a time. How about a visit to the planet I created? It's much larger now, Starro suggested. Next time, when you've made it even bigger, Nian smiled. He had the Space Stone to provide him with unlimited energy, allowing Starro to create a truly large planet for fun. By the way, Starro, what's that above your head? Nian raised his gaze, gazing at the mountain-like, iridescent starfish. Atop it sat a round, red bubble, about a meter in radius. Gwen also gazed curiously at the large bubble. She had noticed it long ago, but had previously dismissed it as Starro's original headdress. Have you forgotten? Starro held the red bubble above his head forward. 3 years ago, you defeated Brainiac and placed his ship en route into the devouring dimension here. Among them were numerous miniature cities, shrunk by Brainiac. Starro spoke in his mind. As the red light on the bubble's surface shifted, a translucent sheen appeared, allowing a glimpse of the scene within. Nian and Gwen's eyes widened in surprise. It was clear. Within the red bubble, a planet was suspended. A tiny planet, only about half a meter in radius, within which lay fatally numerous alien cities of varying appearances. Starro explained, I used energy to create a miniature planet and put all those miniature cities together. This makes it easier to manage. I understand the principle, but what is that? Nian's mouth twitched slightly as he looked at the miniature planet. Surrounded by the alien cities, a human-shaped statue rose from the ground, its head almost protruding from the outer layer of the bubble. Nian, so big, Gwen said with a smile covering her mouth. Actually, the built-in human-shaped statue is not large, only half a meter tall, but compared to the miniature planet and the city, it was simply absurdly large. Starro replied, I added it. For 3 years, I've been telling them through my mind that this is the god who saved them from Brainiac. That's not necessary. Nian was speechless for a moment. He thought for a moment and said, can these cities be restored to their normal size? Starro shook his head. No. I've confirmed that Brainiac's alien spaceship only has special equipment that can shrink objects. Is that so? Nian suddenly remembered the man who had broken into his room and could shrink and grow on his own. But there was no rush. Nian's eyes flickered. After all, these were alien cities, and he couldn't guarantee that they and the surviving aliens wouldn't be hostile to him. Besides, placing them on Earth would undoubtedly cause chaos. Better to let them continue to exist within the devouring dimension. In the devouring dimension, where there were no other planets, the miniature cities would remain the same size as their original counterparts, leaving no impact on the aliens living within. It would even be easier to accommodate and manage them. Starro, focus your mind on them for a while longer, and compile a comprehensive statistics of the alien civilizations their cities originally existed on, as well as the remaining alien population, Nian said. Leave it to me. Starro chuckled. He'd been incredibly bored in the devouring dimension, and now, fabricating planets and observing miniature cities, it was much more fun than wandering the universe. Gwen's rosy little mouth opened slightly in surprise. What's wrong? Nian looked down at Gwen, once his childhood sweetheart, now physically 3 years his senior. No. I just suddenly felt a bit like Cthulhu. Gwen blinked and said, think about it. This space is like a universe, but it actually comes from a cat, and the only entrance is through that cat's mouth. And the aliens living on the microcosm within the devouring dimension are governed by a starfish that's tens of millions of times larger than their home planet. It's really quite bizarre when you think about it. Nian laughed. But Gwen's next words surprised him. Nian, is it possible that our universe is also a similar microcosm, secretly observed by a much larger being? Nian and Starro exchanged a silent glance. Okay, I was just saying it casually, just joking, Gwen waved quickly. After Nian and Gwen left the devouring dimension, the cat's mouth closed, isolating the dimension from the outside world. Oh, I forgot to tell Nian about that, Starro thought to himself. Earlier, the little emperor had devoured a human woman from outside. Starro recognized the man as someone Nian knew, so he used the shrink ray from Brainiac's spaceship to shrink him and transport him to the microplanet. Inside the microplanet, a magnificent yet tranquil alien city awaited. A woman, dressed in a tight black leather jacket, had a curvaceous figure, her smooth hair a cascade of gleaming black. Standing on the smooth metal pavement, Catwoman gazed blankly at the alien city, the eerie, deserted streets, bewildered. Where is this? Why am I here? She remembered she should be in Gotham City. Tap tap. Just then, an ordinary-looking old man, dressed in a black leotard and with raying hair at the temples, strolled by. Excuse me, old man, Catwoman hurried forward and asked, excuse me, where's this place? The old man glanced at her, donned a miniature translation device similar to a hearing aid, and spoke with a sense of age, candor. Candor. Catwoman had never heard of a city with such a name on Earth. The old man nodded slightly, his eyes complex. Indeed. Welcome to Candor, the last remaining city on Krypton. Outside. Future Chronicles headquarters. Nian carried Gwen back to the top floor office. Behind them, the little orange cat closed its maw, a swirling black hole, twitched its tail, and slept soundly on the blanket. Nian set Gwen's increasingly mature body down. He was about to say something when his vision suddenly went black and his body instantly lost consciousness and fell forward. Chapter 330 Death in the Eyes, Old People. Nian. Gwen's eyes widened. Her body, a cushion of air, she reacted with incredible speed, embracing the suddenly unconscious Nian. Young master. Also in the main hall of the top floor office, Wanda watched the strange transformation of Nian. The clean cup slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor with a crash. Wanda's tiny body, seemingly too young for her age, trembled. A flash of crimson flashed across her beautiful, pale red eyes, hinting at extreme emotions like madness, violence, and coldness. The crimson light quickly faded. Let me see. Her charming and adorable black maid dress swayed violently. Wanda rushed to Nian, eagerly extending her fair right hand to the boy's brow. Buzz! As Gwen, holding Nian, gazed in disbelief, the crimson maid's small hand glowed crimson. A strange red energy, like light, yet also like a mist. A wave of energy swirled and rose from Wanda's fingers, carrying a chaotic aura and the aura of the soul, reaching towards the unconscious boy's brow. But then, a hand suddenly grasped Wanda's outstretched right wrist. Stop, I'm fine. Nian breathed, his eyelashes fluttering as he slowly opened his eyes. Wanda and Gwen were both stunned. Your eyes. My eyes. Nian sat on the sofa, resting his head against Gwen's chest. His fingers instinctively reached for the corner of his right eye. His spider sense registered it, too. His normally brown eyes had turned an eerie black, as if pulsing with a dark flame, yet devoid of any warmth. In a matter of seconds, the black receded like a tide, and his pupils returned to their original color. Nian, what happened just now? Gwen asked, a look of concern and fear on her face. I don't know. Nian shook his head. He felt only a fleeting tremor in his soul. He stood up again and stretched himself, finding nothing unusual. It was as if the internet had just been slow, causing his soul to temporarily leave his body for a few seconds. But he still felt something strange. That dark glint in his eyes just now, it looked like death. Why are you two looking at me like that? Nian felt a little uneasy, looking at Gwen and Wanda on either side of him, staring intently at him. Gwen said anxiously but firmly, we must conduct a thorough examination. Master, my ability can detect souls and thoughts, Wanda whispered weakly. Okay. I know my physical condition well. Don't worry too much. Nian didn't want to be constantly protected and treated like a patient by those around him. Besides, if it involved the concept of death, no amount of testing would be able to detect it. No. Gwen stretched out her arms and embraced Nian, causing him to suddenly feel a blackout. But this time, it wasn't a loss of consciousness he had just experienced. Instead, his eyes and face were covered by something soft and fragrant. Nian couldn't breathe. He finally understood where Gwen had gained so much weight over the past 3 years. Gwen held Nian in her arms, calling out, Wanda, come help me. Subdue him and make him lie down. Wanda, bewildered, cautiously reached out her small hand and lifted one of Nian's feet. Wanda, who is your young master? Nian demanded. Frightened, Wanda quickly let go, sending Nian and Gwen tumbling onto the sofa. In the cozy, office-like living room on the top floor, the three of them were in a state of chaos. Finally, it was the AI Alice who came to Nian's rescue. Master, there's something you might want to know. What is it? Nian finally poked his head out from the sofa. Alice, it's about someone you used to know. On the streets of New York. A middle-aged man with slightly graying temples sat slumped on the ground, his hair a mess, his untrimmed beard a scruffy sight. He looked like a homeless person. Yet, he was wearing an expensive designer sweatshirt and jeans, his hands wrapped in white bandages, his eyes vacant as he stared at the passers-by. Stephen Strange, a genius neurologist, had never imagined he would fall to this level. Over 3 months ago, a serious car accident involving a fall from a cliff had left Strange bedridden for 3 months, leaving both hands severely disabled. If he had been the surgeon, Strange would have been confident he could have healed his hands. After all, he was the best doctor. It was precisely because of this that he felt a sense of fate and hopelessness. Without his hands, he could no longer be a doctor, nor could he live a normal life. Fortunately, Strange had just learned that a patient who had been treated at New York First Hospital years ago, despite being severely paralyzed, had recently appeared playing basketball in a New York park like a normal person. This might be his last hope. Strange was about to track down the patient and ask him for a cure for paralysis. Leaning his shoulders against the wall, Strange struggled to his feet and was about to continue toward the basketball court. But then, the phone in his pocket rang. Strange stood at the front door of Future Chronicle headquarters, looking up at the building, the top of which was almost invisible. He had recently exhausted all avenues and methods to treat his hands, and naturally sought help from Future Chronicle, a company specializing in biogenetics and terminal illnesses. Although at the time, he only held out for a glimmer of hope. What Strange didn't expect was that Future Chronicle's customer service had just called to say that the Future Chronicle's general manager wanted to see him. Future Chronicle's general manager, Alice. This was a legendary figure, and it seemed that even Future Chronicle's internal employees had never seen her. Soon, Strange boarded the exclusive elevator to the chairman's office. Watching the elevator rise and jump from floor to floor, Strange felt a strange sense of nervousness. As a former genius doctor, he naturally entered the circles of the upper class. But the top executives of giant corporations like Future Chronicles and Stark Industries are already at the top of the social hierarchy, easily creating a vast network of connections. Furthermore, with his hands paralyzed, he completely lost his ability to converse with them as a doctor. Amidst a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, The elevator arrived at the second to last floor of the headquarters building. The general manager's office. The elevator door opened, and Strange nervously stepped out. What greeted him was a massive office lavishly appointed with top-tier luxury. The curtains on one side of the large floor-to-ceiling window were fully drawn, allowing brilliant golden sunlight to stream in, offering a bird's-eye view of the entire Queensboro of New York. At the desk in the general manager's office, a dark-haired young man sat upright, his bright, piercing eyes fixed on him. You are. Strange's eyes widened, his mouth gaping in shock. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, Mechanical Ascension, Death's Shadow. At Future Chronicle headquarters, in the general manager's office, a young man, looking only about 18, his figure, seemingly cut to perfection, emphasizing the beauty of his white shirt. A handsome young man sat in an office chair. Next to the luxurious, high-end chair, a beautiful young woman with short blonde hair, dressed in a hip-hugging dress, stood quietly, like a secretary. Are you Nian? Nian Prince. Strange walked into the living room, his eyes almost glazed over at the dark-haired boy. Long time no see, Dr. Strange. Nian smiled and nodded. Let's sit down and talk. It's really you. I thought you were ill 3 years ago. Strange was stunned. Back then, Strange had been flown directly from New York to Washington, D.C., by Lorna, to treat Nian. Cancer, seemingly one of humanity's most dreaded incurable diseases, was 10 or even 100 times more terrifying. It was like being watched by the horrifying Grim Reaper. Even with Strange's superb medical skills, he could only survive for 3 days at most. And now, 3 years have passed. The boy who should have died is unharmed, his face rosy, and he sits in the chair exactly as he did 3 years ago. A medical miracle? Oh, I was indeed dead for 3 years, and now I'm back to life, Nian said casually. Strange always felt that his worldview was being completely overturned by the other party. Dead and resurrected? Is this still human? Strange sat down in the chair in front of his desk, his brain slightly digesting the huge amount of information, then looked at Nian and shook and said, Are you the steward of the future era? No. Nian shook his head flatly. Just as Strange breathed a sigh of relief, Nian bluntly stated, I'm considered the chairman of this company, and the general manager is one of my family's housekeepers. Strange didn't know what to say. After a long pause, he slowly exhaled and smiled bitterly. You're truly worthy of me. You always manage to overturn my expectations from every angle. He looked at the girl standing next to Nian, whose beauty, figure, and temperament were all eye-catching. Who is this? Hello, Mr. Strange, my name is Gwen Stacy. Gwen, clutching a document, had short, neat, and intellectually beautiful hair. She was petite and curvaceous, and her legs, clad in black stockings, were straight and even. She looked like a proper secretary. She said politely with a smile. She's my girlfriend, Nian added with a wink. Gwen blushed slightly, but didn't object. Strange felt like he'd been fed a mouthful of dog food. Could he perhaps be more understanding of a disabled man with paralyzed hands who had been single for over 30 years and still had no girlfriend? Nian's gaze fell on Strange's hidden hands. All right. Doctor, how are your hands now? Strange sighed and struggled to lift his bandaged, stiff hands. As you can see, due to a car accident, my hands are severely paralyzed and unable to move. The hospital is helpless. Nian's expression froze. As he watched, a faint black smoke, like morning mist, lingered over Strange's paralyzed palms, dissolving and disintegrating. Like the image of death? Nian. It wasn't until Gwen's voice reached him from the side that Nian came back to his senses. He looked at Strange again. There was no black mist anymore, as if he had just seen it wrong. But, with his spider sense, how could he be wrong? Gwen, did you notice anything unusual about me just now? Like my eyes? Nian asked Gwen directly. No, Gwen replied. You were just dazed for a moment. Apart from that, nothing unusual. Did you see that just now? Black mist. Nian's gaze returned to Strange's hands. Gwen shook her head. I didn't see any black mist. What's wrong? Strange was even more confused. clearly not noticing the strange look in Nian's eyes. Nian's eyes narrowed slightly. So, he was the only one who could see nothing. Nian shook his head and snapped his fingers. Alice. Immediately, a faint blue light, like a scanning beam, descended from the office ceiling, scanning Strange's hands up and down. After the scan was complete, Nian asked directly, "Can it be treated?" Inside the office, Alice's pleasant, crisp voice quickly replied, "Severe muscle necrosis and severe nerve damage. If you can get him here for treatment within a week of the injury, it will be great." Upon hearing this, Strange's eyes dimmed, and his heart sank. The AI Alice continued, "Because of the delay, there are only 3 remaining treatment options. One is to discard the old limb and replace it with a new pair of limbs. One is to add some metal to repair the nerves, transforming the old limb into a semi-mechanical, semi-biological form. The last is to discard the old limb and replace it with a pair of metal mechanical limbs." 3 options? How would they work? Strange's mouth was dry. "Alice, either treatment option will restore your hands to at least their original function, or even better." Strange's eyes widened with excitement, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Doctor, what do you think?" Nian said. "I personally recommend the third option. Since your hands are already necrotic, why not go straight to mechanical ascension?" Strange took a deep breath and said, "I'd like the second option. Both the first and third options would require the loss of the old limb. Only the second option allowed the old limb to be preserved while undergoing advanced repairs." Strange was unwilling to part with the original hands that had made him a genius doctor. Since it was Strange's choice, Nian offered no further persuasion. "Alice, help him arrange it." Alice said, "Mr. Strange, you can begin treatment at Future Era's lab today. Healing is expected to be complete tomorrow." "Thank you, Nian, thank you." Strange's eyes were filled with gratitude, and he thanked him repeatedly. "Haven't you helped me before?" Nian smiled. "Those 2 times, I wasn't much help." Strange shook his head, feeling ashamed. "Aren't we friends?" "Friends don't care about these things," Nian shrugged. To him, helping Strange out wasn't even a small favor. Nian thought for a moment, then smiled. "If you feel you owe it to me, come work at my company once your hand heals. We need talent like you." It's settled then. A smile crossed Strange's scruffy, beard-like face. Future Era is a dream workplace for many people right now. After saying goodbye to Strange, Nian and Gwen arrived at a busy pedestrian street not far from Future Chronicles headquarters. There was one thing Nian urgently needed to confirm. Chapter 332, The Fourth Permanent Ability, Ancient One. New York City, Queens, a pedestrian street. It was afternoon, the streets bustling with traffic, the LED lights flashing as usual. Some external screens were still broadcasting news reports about the Avengers split in the Civil War. Captain America, Black Widow, Winter Soldier, Falcon. 5-star wanted. A young man and an older, short-haired girl, hand in hand, strolled down the busy street like an ordinary couple. Nian glanced around, scanning the pedestrians. Soon, he noticed something, his eyes fixed on a street performer. Gwen also glanced over curiously, but her spider sense didn't detect anything unusual. Meanwhile, Nian could see a black mist lingering around the street performer's feet. It was similar to the black mist that had appeared on Strange's paralyzed hands. However, the black mist on the street performer's feet was more numerous, and it was constantly condensing, unlike the dissipating pattern on Strange's hands. What was this black mist that only he could see? Nian felt a touch of suspicion, but even more of confusion and bewilderment. Pulling Gwen along, he continued walking. He noticed that among the passers-by, a few were shrouded in this black mist. The amount of black mist lingering around them, its concentration and dissipation, varied from person to person. He saw a homeless man sitting next to a trash can, his entire body shrouded in black mist, which was constantly condensing towards him. Could it be? Nian had a vague suspicion, but he hesitated to jump to conclusions. He had the AI Alice record and observe all the passers-by with the black mist. In just a day or two, we should have a conclusion, Nian thought to himself. The next morning, Nian woke from his oversized bed in the top-floor office of Future Chronicle. He glanced to his side. Beneath the blanket, the delicate curves of a graceful figure were outlined. A few strands of golden hair, stained with sweat, clung to the sleeping face. The arm and neck that stretched out were white and smooth. Without interrupting her, Nian pulled back the blanket and emerged naked. After showering in an office reminiscent of a luxurious hotel, Nian suddenly realized he had forgotten a change of clothes. He opened the bathroom door and saw a brand new set of men's clothing neatly laid out by the doorway. Nian was startled. A hearty breakfast for two had been placed on the table outside. Gwen was still soundly asleep, and the only person who could do this was Wanda. Nian's eyes were complicated. He had found an excuse last night and sent Wanda home. Wanda, seemingly aware of Nian's intentions, obediently left without questioning and hadn't come back since last night. Nian glanced around, but seeing no sign of Wanda, he grabbed his clothes and changed. Now, on the other side of the real world, in the mirror dimension, a small figure in a red dress paused, watching Nian, who had changed clothes and begun to eat breakfast in reality, through a mirror-like space wall. Horizontal ellipsis. Nian was eating breakfast when Alice's report arrived. "Master, the matter you asked me to investigate yesterday. Tell me about it." Nian nodded slightly as she ate her pasta. Alice reported, "The first person is Amos, a 39-year-old male street performer. He was hit by a truck while returning home late last night. He's currently in the hospital, but his legs are likely missing." "Continue." Nian nodded. Alice, "The second person is Holt Eid, a 55-year-old male homeless man. He was shot dead on the street early this morning, twice." Nian remembered the man. He was the one most shrouded in black mist yesterday afternoon. He paused, then said in a deep voice, "Continue." "The third person. Elena Lisa, female, 29 years old, bank employee." Alice said, "Nothing happened to her last night or this morning." "Nothing happened." Nian was puzzled. After all, the black mist surrounding the man was second only to the second homeless man. Alice continued, "I reviewed Elena Lisa's medical records and discovered a brain tumor. She'll need a craniotomy in 2 days. The system's estimates don't bode well for her." "The fourth person." Alice continued. Nian interrupted, "Okay, that's enough." He placed his knife and fork on the CD, his eyes complex and tinged with strange colors. Now he could confirm what the black mist he had seen was. It was death. More precisely, it was the edges and shadows of the concept and rules of death. When the mist-like rules of death coalesced around a person, it meant they were about to encounter something life-threatening, and the probability of death was closely related to the amount of mist. When the mist dissipated from a person, it meant they had survived a life-threatening event and escaped death. "Sister." Nian muttered to himself. Perhaps this was the ability he had awakened after his soul merged with a death mark under his sister's guidance. It allowed Nian's eyes to perceive the very outlines and shadows of death. This was also Nian's fourth permanent ability, after Spider Sense, the Man of Steel, and Divine Immortality, that he truly possessed, the eyes of death. At Future Chronicle headquarters, in an empty laboratory, a large human biochamber slowly opened, revealing a middle-aged man, shirtless, lying within. Hundreds of tiny wires densely connected his arms. As the chamber door opened, countless wires detached from his arms and retracted. Strange opened his eyes, sat up from the biochamber, and looked down at his hands, their muscles and skin intact. Only at the joints of his arms and wrists did a faint shimmer of silver metal appear, like thin, additional wrist guards. "Repaired. Give it a try." Alice's voice echoed from the lab. Strange immediately clenched his fingers into fists, excited. "I think it's great. My hands have incredible power." He tried to punch forward, and even with a casual punch, a sharp gust of wind was unleashed. "Alice, of course. Your current semi-mechanized hands have a grip 3 times stronger than the original. Not only that, but reaction speed and stability have also increased 3-fold. Thanks to the built-in vibranium metal, the resistance to blows has increased by more than 10-fold. My hands are completely healed, better than before." Strange looked at his raised semi-mechanized palms, tears streaming down his face. Now, in the top-floor office of Future Chronicle headquarters, Nian was still marveling at his fourth permanent ability, when, behind him, the sound of soft footsteps echoed from the room behind him. "Wanda, you're back." Nian instinctively turned to look, and was startled again. He saw a bald woman in a yellow robe stood in the middle of the living room with her hands behind her back. Her eyes, which were usually calm and indifferent, were now looking at him with a complicated expression. Chapter 333 I really don't want to be the Supreme Master. Nian smiled faintly at the bald woman who had appeared in the living room, waving in greeting. You're truly back. Ancient One gazed at Nian, then glanced at the oversized round bed not far away, its bulging quilt and the scattered clothing beside it. He said calmly, and, by the looks of it, you've all recovered well. Not bad, not bad, Nian said without embarrassment. After so much time and so much experience, Nian and Ancient One's relationship was more than just a friendship. In Nian's eyes, Ancient One was more like an elder, always caring for his grandmother. Of course, if Ancient One knew Nian's feelings, one wondered how she would react. While her age made her worthy of being Nian's grandmother, the demigod Wonder Woman Diana was even older. Nian seated Ancient One on the living room sofa. Since Wanda wasn't home, he personally prepared a pot of Oriental tea. I want to thank you again for your care and guidance of Wanda over the past 3 years. I didn't take care of her much? Ancient One shook his head slightly, saying, you should know. That child can handle everything on her own now. It's more like she takes care of others than others. Indeed, Nian smiled knowingly, a look of pride barely concealed on her face. Seeing Nian's awkward approach, Ancient One couldn't help but shrug. She rolled up the sleeves of her yellow robe slightly, took the teapot, and gently tilted it down. She continued, as for her guidance, she learned the basic spells of Camartage 3 years ago. She could easily master some of the more advanced spells by studying the magic book. I don't have much to teach her anymore. Ancient One took out another cup of tea and poured it for Nian, steam rising from it. No matter what, I still want to thank you, Nian said with a sincere smile. The Ancient One had helped him so much, constantly cleaning up his messes. Upon their first meeting, he had helped Nian tame the symbiote venom. Later, he pulled the out-of-control Trinity into the mirror dimension and crafted the Infinity Stones into his own magical tools. The dimensional necklace was crucial to Nian's resurrection. He also taught Wanda magic and gifted her with the cloak of levitation and the red belt. Sometimes, even Nian couldn't understand why the Ancient One, a guardian solely focused on Earth, had silently showered him with so much care. He treated everyone else the same, except for him. But Nian knew he harbored no ill will or agenda. Otherwise, he would have quietly wiped him out the moment they first met. I've already received your thank you. The Ancient One's beautiful face was calm, a gentle, unsentimental expression honed over the years. He took a sip from his teacup. That's not nearly enough. Nian shook his head and promised, Master. If you need anything in the future, please tell me. I'll do my best to help you achieve it. He rarely made promises to others, but Ancient One was indeed worthy. However, Ancient One's next word stunned the young man. What if I let you become the Supreme Sorcerer? Nian's eyes widened, then he scratched his head. Master, you must be joking. I'm just an ordinary person. According to what you said before, it would take me 100 years to learn a basic portal. How could I possibly be the Supreme Sorcerer of Earth, the Lord of Camartage, and the commander of the 3 holy temples? Asking someone who knew no magic to become the Supreme Sorcerer, representing the highest realm of Earth's magic, was a bit far-fetched. Ancient One's eyes were calm as he gazed at Nian. Just tell me if you want to take on the role. As for magic, it's a simple matter for you to use it. Wanda. Master, you know, Nian interrupted, spreading his hands. I'm really not cut out to protect the world. Besides, I have to look after the multidimensional world. Suddenly, Ancient One's voice turned serious, but you should understand that if the sky falls, someone has to hold it up. Nian smiled casually, unconcerned. Master, don't you still have you? Even if the entire world falls, you, the Supreme, still have it. Ancient One didn't respond. She glanced sideways at the city outside the window and asked, bewildered, Nian, what are your goals? Goal. Nian was stunned. His goals had once been, to get into a good university, earn money to support his aunt, and live a carefree life, just like many ordinary people, simple and unpretentious. However, after experiencing so many chaotic and extraordinary events, he seemed to be drifting further and further away from his original goals. Nian's brow furrowed slightly. Ancient One seemed to see through his thoughts. Everyone has different goals at each stage of life. Do you still want to go back to school now? Can you really be an ordinary person now? With these words, Ancient One stood up from the sofa, casually opened a circular portal in the living room, and walked in. He left the silent boy sitting on the living room sofa. In the mirrored space. Stepping through the portal, Ancient One entered. Looking at the young girl in a red dress leaning quietly in front of him, he sighed softly and said, "If you don't tell him, he won't know your feelings." Noon. Gwen, already dressed, sat blankly on the living room sofa, her eyes blank and dazed. A hand holding a bottle of iced cola brought it close to her face, and the short-haired girl trembled violently from face to body. "Gwen, are you okay?" Nian sat down with the iced cola, looking at Gwen beside him in confusion. Even her spider sense had failed. Could she have gone crazy? Gwen looked at Nian, her eyes brightening slightly. She gritted her teeth in anger. "Damn it! Why didn't you wake me up this morning? I saw you were sound asleep, so I didn't wake you," Nian said with a hint of innocence. "Even if you were sound asleep, you should have woken me up." Gwen covered her face with her hands, feeling ashamed to face anyone. She had actually been awake when the Ancient One arrived, but it was inconvenient to come out, so she stayed hidden under the covers. Gwen raged, "It's all your fault. You stayed up so late last night." Nian felt even more innocent. "You kept saying, 'Keep going, don't stop, keep going.'" Steam billowed from her head. Gwen blushed, and with a fierce look on her face, she threw Nian onto the sofa. Nian wanted to shout, "The mother spider is killing people." Just then, a crimson figure suddenly appeared in the living room, like a rescuer. Gwen, who had been sitting awkwardly astride Nian, reacted quickly and rolled off, smoothing her skirt as she hurriedly explained, "Wanda, don't misunderstand. Wanda, where were you going today?" Nian looked at the crimson maid before him, the slightest trace of worry fading from her eyes. "I just went to Kamartaj. I'll prepare lunch right away," Wanda said respectfully, bowing. She paused briefly, then added hesitantly, "Master, can you come with me somewhere this afternoon?" Nian paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "Of course." His computer had a problem last night, and the manuscript had been deleted, so he rushed back today. Chapter 334 Chaotic Timeline, Scarlet Maid. Inside the Future Chronicles laboratory, Strange was thrilled, constantly testing his repaired cybernetic hands. With 3 times the grip strength and reaction speed, his punches were even faster and more powerful than those of an average boxer. After a while, Strange finally calmed down a bit and asked the camera in the corner, "How much will it cost to repair these hands?" Strange knew without hesitation that the cost would be exorbitant. But for him, any price was worth it. The sweet voice of the artificial intelligence Alice soon echoed in the deserted laboratory, "Because a certain amount of vibranium metal has been added to the endoskeleton, if we use the market price, we estimate it to be $1 billion US. Of course, this is just an estimate. After all, both vibranium and deep neural repair technology are currently unavailable. $1 billion US. Strange breathed softly. Even as a genius doctor, his years of savings and experience only netted him a few $100 million. However, he could still make money in the future, as long as he had these new hands that far surpassed his previous capabilities. "Please tell your master, Nian, that I'll gather the $10 billion and pay it as soon as possible," Strange replied solemnly. Unexpectedly, Alice replied, "The master has already said that. Since you're his friend, all medical expenses are waived." Strange's eyes widened in surprise. "That's $1 billion. Just waiving it like that was truly generous." "Friends," Strange muttered, his body trembling slightly. Strange walked out of the Future Chronicle headquarters, bathed in the brilliant sunlight outside, his palms truly feeling the warmth of the light. He felt a sense of complete rebirth. Taking this step, he would usher in a whole new life. As Strange took a step forward, he saw a bald woman standing right in front of him. A bald woman in a yellow robe, hands clasped behind her back, approached him and spoke with a charlatanic air. "Stephen Strange, do you wish to have your hands healed? Who are you?" Strange looked at the bald woman in confusion, then raised his own palms to indicate, "My hands have just been healed." Ancient One gazed down at Strange's perfectly repaired, semi-mechanized hands. A brief, awkward silence. She glanced up at the Future Chronicle building behind Strange and instantly understood. That guy has rewritten this timeline again. Afternoon. New York City. The sky was clear, the sunlight wasn't glaring, the angle and intensity of the light comfortable. On a modern city street, 2 shadows, one large and one small, walked side by side, their shadows slightly elongated on the pavement. They were a dark-haired boy, barely out of adulthood, in casual clothes, and a girl, about 13 or 14, with a Lolita-like figure, dressed in a red dress. They were none other than Nian and Wanda, master and servant. Both of them were likely 3 years older than they appeared. Nian's immortal body had ceased to grow after 3 years of lying in state. Wanda's, presumably due to the awakening of her powers or some other reason, had also stopped growing. Appearing unchanged from 3 years ago, the two of them paced the street at a leisurely pace. While they appeared to be walking side by side, in reality, there was a certain distance between them. Wanda would deliberately slow down her pace, allowing Nian to always be a step ahead, subtly revealing the interdependence and hierarchy between master and servant. Nian's deliberate slowing down of her own pace was met with a corresponding slowing down by Wanda. "Wanda, aren't you taking me to my destination? You must walk ahead," Nian said, a bit amused. "Yes, master." Wanda then quickened her pace, but only a fraction. Silence fell again, the two of them, separated by a vague distance, as they crossed an intersection. Nian looked at the doll-like fair profile of the girl beside him, spread his hands helplessly, and sighed. "Okay, I should review my mistakes first. I should have lied to you last night. I shouldn't have sent you away, and did that with Gwen." In response, Wanda's face was calm, and she shook her head and said, "I don't think the young master has done anything wrong, or anything that needs to be reviewed. Anyway, I just need to follow your orders. As for the young master and Miss Gwen, communication between adult men and women is also very normal." The girl's childish and crisp words seemed calm and mature. "As for making the young master unable to let go, and even making the young master need lies to get rid of me, these are all because I didn't do my job well. That's not the case." Nian smiled helplessly, and said sincerely, "You have always done an excellent job as a maid. There is no one more perfect than you. It's just..." Nian hesitated to speak, and finally slowly spit out, "I am considering it. Those things are a little too early for you, so it is better to avoid you. I have learned physiology class in elementary school." Wanda's cheeks puffed up slightly, and she said calmly, "In the future, I still have to serve the young master and the mistress. If I can't even face these things calmly, how can I do my job as a maid well?" She hasn't finished speaking yet. Wanda's soft, smooth crimson hair was rubbed hard by a large hand, causing her to unconsciously let out a lovely whoosh. "Wanda, you don't need to serve anyone, including me," Nian said in a stern, scolding tone. "Bringing you back here as a maid was just an excuse to make you feel comfortable staying. After all these years of working, you no longer owe me or the Prince family anything." He had always treated Wanda like a family member, a sister. Faced with a maid younger than him, yet so mature and usually so perfect, Nian often wondered if he had made a mistake, leading Wanda down a difficult path. Nian thought for a moment, his expression complicated, and said in a deep voice, "I once told you that when you grow up, you can choose the life you want. There's no need to revolve around me." Before he could finish his words, "Now, am I still a little grown up?" Wanda took light steps, her well-proportioned legs wrapped in white socks leaping up with all her might. Her slender, soft body spun half a circle in the air, her crimson hair flying. "Master, we've arrived." Nian was slightly startled. He looked at the girl smiling at him, then glanced behind Wanda and saw a small house. This two-story house nestled in the city looked incredibly familiar. It was exactly the same two-story house he had seen in his past visions in the Cauldron of All Things in the New York Temple. This was the family of four that had been destroyed during the Battle of New York over 3 years ago by little Wanda. Chapter 335 Wanda's Feelings, Spider and Quicksilver. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar two-story house before him, Nian was surprised. It was exactly the same as he had seen in his past visions. The house number, the style, the greenery in the yard, the brick and tile, the furnishings, even the condition of the house were exactly the same. Yet, this house must have been destroyed 3 years ago during the Battle of New York. Wanda had been dug out from beneath the rubble of the current house by Nian himself. This is... Nian looked around and saw that this street was the site of Wanda's former home. 3 years had passed. The alien remnants of the Battle of New York had been cleared, the blockade lifted, and many new houses were built on the ruins. "Master, this is my former home. A year ago, after the blockade of this area was lifted, Pietro and I rebuilt it from the ruins according to our memories. Wanda spoke softly, her beautiful rosy eyes fixed on the house before her. Xinian looked at the young girl standing in front of the house, and his heart twitched inexplicably. Xinian realized that he seemed to pay little attention to Wanda's affairs. It was like this 3 years ago, and it would be the same 3 years later. Wanda, the maid, considered him her whole world, her own life the center of everything. Turning back, Wanda asked with a hint of anticipation, "Master, would you like to come in and sit for a moment?" "Of course, since I'm here," Xinian nodded. "Master, please come in." Wanda took out her key and opened the door, appearing delighted. She pulled out a pair of slippers, already prepared, from the shoe cabinet next to the door, and put them on Xinian. Xinian slipped on the slippers, which fit perfectly, and stepped inside. Inside, ordinary old appliances, furniture, and decorations were all available, just as he had seen in his vision. The house retained traces of the life of a family of 4, exuding a gentle warmth of peaceful times. However, Xinian knew that only the 2 children from that time remained. "Does anyone live here now?" Xinian glanced at the living room. A coat hung casually on the armrest of the sofa. On the table lay a video game console, ping-pong paddles, and yesterday's newspaper. With Wanda always around, his home was always clean and tidy. Seeing the slightly messy place, he felt a momentary discomfort. Wanda, now in pink slippers, walked briskly as she prepared a drink, replying, "Pietro has been living here. He's also attending a local high school in New York." "That kid, he's in high school too." Nian couldn't help but smile, then suddenly froze. He remembered that Gwen's cousin, Peter Parker, was also in high school. Could it be the same high school? It couldn't be such a coincidence. Nian dismissed his ridiculous thoughts and whispered, "Wanda, if you want to move back here in the future, that's fine." Wanda's hand, holding the coffee cup, trembled slightly. The smile on her face turned to fear. With a trembling voice, she asked, "Master, don't you want me anymore?" "That's not what I meant." Nian, not expecting Wanda's reaction to be so extreme, quickly explained, "What I meant is, you have a magic portal that allows you to travel back to my house at any time. So, if you want to move back here, that's fine." "I don't want to." Wanda shook her head sharply, flatly rejecting the idea. In a voice only she could hear, she whispered, "This place hasn't been my home for a long time." In the afternoon, the setting sun painted the city red. The light and shadows in the 2-story house were blurred. Wanda strolled briskly out of the ground floor kitchen, holding a plate of fresh handmade cakes. She found Nian sitting on a sofa, eyes closed, breathing evenly. "Master." Wanda tried to call out, but the figure in the chair didn't respond, evidently asleep. She quietly placed the plate on the table. The girl in the dress approached the sofa and gracefully crouched down, her petite, slender figure. Her strikingly voluminous crimson hair shone against the light, radiating a crimson across the room. Wanda raised her ruby-red eyes and silently gazed down at the young man reclining on the sofa, until the sunlight faded like a tide. Until night fell outside and the vibrant neon lights of the city came on. What remained unchanged was a warmth rarely seen in Wanda's eyes, a fiery intensity that only appeared when Nian slept. "Love you, love you, love you, love you. Love you so much?" Wanda took Nian's right hand, gently rubbing it against her face, and whispered, "Young master, this isn't my home anymore. Because, home is where you are." The young master always urged her to pursue freedom, her own life and future. In truth, Wanda's greatest wish was to be by his side, nothing more. If only the mistress of the house could let Wanda stay, no matter the cost. Wanda clutched her chest tightly with her small hands. The future. Whether it was Lady Diana, Miss Gwen, or Miss Kara, it didn't matter who it was, as long as she could stay by his side. Because Wanda was just a maid, this alone was enough. She would keep the sentiments that Teacher Guyi had expressed deep within her heart. "Master, for 3 years, I've been waiting for you right where everything was. If growing up means leaving you, then I'd rather never grow up." At this thought, the necklace on Wanda's chest glowed a faint crimson, and a deep crimson light flashed in her eyes. Night. In Queens, New York, in front of a 5-star hotel. A white boy, about 16, stopped at the hotel entrance. He glanced down at his phone and muttered to himself, "This should be it. Look at the location, it's here." Unexpectedly, another voice, similar to his, echoed from the side. The white boy, still carrying his backpack, glanced sideways and suddenly met the gaze of a silver-haired boy of the same age next to him. Peter Parker. Pietro. The two exchanged glances, their gazes synced. "Why are you here?" "My cousin asked me to come," Peter Parker explained. Pietro adjusted his goggles and spread his hands. "What a coincidence. My sister texted me my location and asked me to come here for a family dinner." "What a coincidence." Peter Parker blinked. The two weren't actually close, but they had been classmates in high school, so naturally they knew each other. "Let's go in together," Pietro said casually. "Okay," Peter Parker didn't refuse. Together, they entered the magnificent five-star hotel and, enthusiastically led by the manager and the front desk clerk, headed to their reserved private room. However, Peter Parker and Pietro felt something was amiss until they were both led to the same room. "You're here too?" Pietro looked at Peter Parker beside him with a strange expression. "I think so." Peter Parker scratched his head, unsure. But at this moment, a familiar voice rang out from behind them. "You two, what are you doing standing at the door? Why don't you go in?" Peter Parker and Pietro were startled. Peter's reaction was fast enough, but Pietro's was even faster. They both turned around at the same time and saw the black-haired boy behind them, whose appearance hadn't changed at all compared to 3 years ago. They were both excited and shouted in unison again, "Big Brother!" Chapter 336, Spider-Man is in trouble, Quicksilver is doomed to die. Brothers Nian. Pietro, one of the twins, had always been outspoken, while Peter Parker was more shy and reserved. But when they both saw the dark-haired boy behind them, their faces lit up with excitement. Then, Pietro and Peter Parker exchanged a glance. It seemed they hadn't come to the wrong place. "Long time no see," Nian smiled. He instinctively wanted to rub their heads, but when he raised his hand, he ended up just patting them on the shoulder. 3 years had passed. The two little brats had become adults. Pietro was almost towering over him, and Peter Parker, while not quite as tall, looked solid and muscular. Only Nian's appearance remained unchanged, and he truly felt the passage of 3 years. Compared to Pietro and Peter Parker, Nian looked more like a high school student of the same age. He patted Nian on the shoulder. Peter Parker smiled shyly, hesitated for a moment, and then couldn't help but ask, "Brother, where have you been these past few years?" "I asked Gwen, but she wouldn't answer. I asked my aunt and uncle, but they just said you moved away, and they don't know where." Peter Parker said sincerely, "In the past 3 years, when I've been to my cousin's house, Gwen's mood has always been off, often staring blankly at her phone or photo album. I think she's probably missing you." "Really?" Nian's lips curled slightly. But then, the door to the private room opened, and a blushing young woman emerged. Today, the little spider mother Gwen wore a knee-length skirt, her short, golden hair a sleek and intellectual look. Her long, even legs were clad in black stockings, a balanced blend of youth and maturity. Gwen crossed her arms and glared at her cousin fiercely. "What are you talking about? I didn't even think about him. I didn't say anything." Peter Parker, frightened, quickly covered his mouth and blinked in an attempt to deceive. "Ah, it's that fierce older sister from before," Pietro exclaimed in surprise upon seeing Gwen. "Who's fierce?" Gwen smiled faintly, clenching her fists. She turned her gentle gaze to Pietro. "Little brat, don't think just because you're so tall you can say whatever you want." She still remembered that brat had once, right in front of her, tried to sell her sister to Nian. Pietro was equally quick to give in, covering his mouth with his hand like Peter Parker. He was afraid. Sure enough, all older sisters are the same. After teaching her 2 younger siblings, Gwen reached out and took Nian's left hand, saying in a gentle, affectionate voice, "Nian, let's go in. Dinner is ready." Peter Parker and Pietro exchanged glances, feeling the injustice. Nian nodded, and led the others into the private room. Inside the magnificent and luxurious private room, a girl in a red dress stood quietly beside a table laden with delicious food. "Sister." Pietro glanced up at Wanda, then at Nian beside him. His eyes shifted slightly, his mind mulling over something. "Wanda, you should sit down and eat with us," Nian said. "But..." Wanda hesitated. "Don't refuse. Tonight is a family dinner. We're all family. You don't have to look after me," Nian said without question. "Yes, master." Wanda nodded submissively. And so, Nian took the center seat at the table. To her right sat her cousins, Gwen and Peter Parker, and to her left sat the twins, Wanda and Pietro. Today was indeed a small family dinner. It would have been nice if she were here too. As Nian looked at the twins, Wanda and Pietro, a petite yet imposing figure suddenly surfaced in his mind. 3 years had passed, and he wondered where she was or what she was doing. Besides, there was something else that caught Nian's gaze. He looked at Peter Parker, who sat to his right. He could see a faint black mist gathering around Peter. The concept of death was gathering around Peter Parker, and the black mist was even more intense than the strange he'd seen before. This meant that Spider-Man Peter Parker would soon face a life-threatening situation. Joining the Avengers and facing mortal danger wasn't surprising. But Nian narrowed his eyes and looked to his left, at Pietro, who sat next to Wanda. Under the eye of death, it was visible. Black mist surged toward Pietro from all directions, carrying an ominous aura, almost enveloping him from head to toe. This meant that Pietro would soon face certain death. Nian calmly withdrew his gaze, his heart heavy, without any excessive panic or fear. After all, that would be meaningless. Nian had discussed this with the Ancient One. The so-called future is just one of many observable timelines. Everyone's decisions and actions now will overturn the future timeline. Therefore, the omen of death Nian observed in Pietro didn't guarantee his certain death. This only means that in most timelines, Pietro will meet his end. Nian didn't mention the death image he saw, as that would only cause the person concerned to worry. With foresight, he could take precautions. What Nian didn't expect was that, just 3 days after his resurrection, he would face the rules of death again so soon. After dinner, Wanda wanted to pay, but Nian asked her to stay with Pietro. Ostensibly, it was to allow Wanda and Pietro to spend more time together. In reality, it was to allow Wanda to care for Pietro, who was severely affected by the rules of death. Although Nian didn't believe the event that would lead to Pietro's death would likely occur tonight. At the front desk, the female manager respectfully handed the bank card back with both hands and politely replied, "Mr. Nian Prince, right? Someone just paid for your meal tonight." "Who paid?" Nian was puzzled. He didn't remember asking Alice to pay in advance. "She's waiting for you on the second floor." The female manager spoke of the other person with a certain awe. "Oh." A strange look flashed in Nian's eyes, and he shrugged. "Please lead the way." Nian followed the female manager to the second floor of the 5-star hotel. Approaching a half-open main hall door, the female manager paused, not entering, but respectfully announced, "Boss, I've brought him here." The female manager then gestured to Nian, "She's inside. Mr. Prince, please come in." She raised her left hand politely, like a signpost pointing inward. Nian nodded and walked in without hesitation. His spider sense didn't trigger, indicating no potential danger. Nian was also a little curious about who the other person was. Pushing open the door, Nian stepped into the hotel's second-floor main hall. The main hall was spacious enough for a large, high-end banquet, and the interior was resplendent and luxurious. The floor was covered with clean, high-quality red carpet, and the ceiling was decorated with exquisite and ornate glass hangings. A single woman sat on a sofa diagonally facing the door. She crossed her legs, a smile on her lips, and gazed at him calmly. "It's you," Nian said, surprised and delighted. He'd been feeling down the last couple of days, stuck in his writing, feeling quite uncomfortable. He'd try to adjust as soon as possible. The transitional plot would soon be over. Chapter 337, Polaris Boss 3 years later. Under the warm, sunny glow of a hanging glass lamp, a young woman sat on a single leather sofa. Her dark green hair cascaded freely over her shoulders, her nose was high and sharp, like a finely carved sculpture, her eyes resembled a pair of emeralds, and a hint of an uninhibited smile graced her lips, painted a deep red. Her skin was fair and radiant, and her tall figure was slender. She wore a masculine outfit of a white shirt, a black blazer, and long black trousers, creating an androgynous aesthetic. Her feet were clad in a pair of small-sized black leather shoes, her slender right foot resting lightly on her left thigh, revealing a slender, snow-white ankle. Despite crossing her legs, the girl didn't seem uncomfortable. Her domineering aura was enough to make anyone want to step on her. Of course, Nian didn't have that habit. Seeing her, Nian felt both surprised and delighted. "What? 3 years have passed, And you don't even call me boss when we meet." The girl suppressed her inner emotions, staring coldly at the boy, muttering a slightly dissatisfied tone. Xinian smiled casually. "Boss, long time no see." Xinian said sincerely, "I just didn't expect to see you so soon, just when I was thinking about you." "That's right." Sitting in the main hall on the second floor of the five-star hotel was none other than Lorna, the boss of Polaris. Faced with Nian's direct and sincere words, Luna felt a momentary discomfort. Her no longer flat chest rose and fell slightly, and she managed a cool response. "I don't know what you've been through, but for you, 3 years just seemed to pass by in a single sleep, right?" "That's not true." Nian shook his head. "I've been trying my best. Every day I want to come back, to see you again." "Stop. Stop." Luna interrupted Nian. Her well-developed chest rose and fell, her aloofness and dominance gone. A faint blush crept across her beautiful cheeks. She reprimanded him with a hint of discontent. "Stupid little brother, you haven't been hooking up with other women these past 3 years, have you?" All those flattering words. Nian blinked, the corners of her mouth curling up slightly. As expected, even after 3 years, the once mature and domineering Lolita leader had transformed into a perfect, mature woman, yet she still remained cold on the outside but warm on the inside. "Hurry up and sit down. Are you implying I'm still short by standing?" Lorna snorted, her tone reprimanding a younger brother. "Okay, boss." Knowing this was another way for Lorna to express her concern, Xinian immediately sat down on the single chair in front of her. After settling down, he and Lorna's eyes met. Xinian felt a bit uncomfortable. She had once been a short-legged young woman, but now she had grown into a sturdy young woman over 5 feet 4 inches tall. Lorna looked at Xinian, clearly wanting to say more, but for a moment, she didn't know where to begin. It was Xinian who broke the silence first. Scratching her head, she said stiffly, "Have you been okay these past 3 years?" Lorna didn't reply. With a slight jerk of her right index finger, the leather sofa Xinian sat on shifted forward, almost merging with Lorna's. Her legs, once crossed, lifted and rested directly on Xinian's thighs. Xinian was stunned for a moment, staring at the green-haired girl so close before him. He could smell her faint fragrance. "You were too quiet. This distance is just right," Lorna said confidently, arms folded across her chest. "All right," Xinian shrugged. He was, as expected, the boss. He always did things unconventionally. Besides, even through his pants, he could feel the softness of those slender legs draped over him. Even though he was the boss, his body was still female, wasn't it? Xinian didn't dare to say these words directly, or else the boss would definitely challenge him to a showdown. Thank you for finally rescuing Pietro." Lorna, like she had 3 years ago, was still not good at thanking others. She tilted her head and said, "I owe you another favor. You're my boss. Isn't that what a little brother should do?" Xinian replied calmly, his eyes involuntarily falling on the bright, dark color of the girl's perfectly shaped lips. Compared to her previous translucent pink lips, coated in syrup, the darker shade held a unique allure. Although Xinian glanced away, Lorna had clearly noticed. Lorna glared at him in disapproval. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing," Xinian admitted. Seeing Lorna's skepticism and a desire to delve deeper, he quickly glanced around the lobby and changed the subject. "Did you open this hotel?" Lorna nodded and replied, 2 years ago, after finishing junior high with Wanda, I returned to New York and used some of my old funds to build this hotel." She chuckled. "Haven't you noticed? Many of the waiters and managers here are from my old team." Xinian pondered. No wonder some of the people he had just met looked familiar. It turned out many of the people working at the hotel were former underworld associates of Lorna's, now back on the right track and in their proper careers, a clean slate. What a coincidence. This hotel is right near the Future Chronicle headquarters. Xinian smiled. He hadn't expected that, on a Friday afternoon off, he'd be hosting Gwen and her cousins and the Wanda twins for dinner, and they'd end up at Lorna's hotel. Lorna's clear eyes reflected the young man's face. It couldn't be a coincidence that it was near the Future Chronicle headquarters. Lorna thought to herself. Wanda and Pietro, they're still here. You could go meet them, Xinian suggested. It's time for you to get to know each other. Lorna shook her head, refusing without hesitation, not yet. She paused, then whispered, it's hard for them to suddenly accept they have a half-sister. Xinian said, they're not as fragile as you think. Let's wait a while, Lorna said, her face sullen, her fists clenched softly across her chest. It turns out that the boss also gets scared sometimes. Xinian's heart twitched slightly, and he opened his mouth to continue persuading, but Luna glared at him impatiently. Say it again, I'll bite you. Xinian stopped talking, worried that his iron body would break the boss's teeth. After all, his tolerance for beatings is not on the same level as before. The lobby of the 5-star hotel suddenly became quiet again. Forget it. Luna suddenly rubbed her soft dark green hair with one hand in annoyance, and rested her head on the back of the chair with her eyes closed. Come on. Come for what? Xinian was completely confused. Don't you want to kiss? I'll kiss you enough. Luna had a cold face, and she crossed her chest with one hand domineeringly, and pointed the slender index finger of her right hand at her soft lips painted with dark lipstick. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338, The Invincible Combination returns to fight death. Inside the 5-star hotel. Where'd Big Brother go? Why hasn't he come back in so long? Pietro asked in confusion, replacing his goggles in the first-floor common room. A young girl, nearly half a head shorter than Pietro, calmly replied, a young master has his own things to do. Pietro patted his chest, eager to act. Wanda, how about I go look for her? With my speed, I could walk around the entire hotel in under a second. Try it. I've told you so many times, don't even think about using your powers out there. Wanda's pale red eyes gave Pietro a dispassionate look, causing him to slump. Peter Parker, watching from a distance, marveled at how Pietro, a high school student known for his unruly ways, was being so tightly controlled by a girl who looked like a junior high student. Peter Parker muttered, is that the housekeeper from Big Brother's family? She's so young. Her name is Wanda, and she's at least older than you, Gwen explained. Really? She only looks 13 or 14. Peter Parker's eyes widened in surprise. Pietro glanced at Gwen, then slyly leaned closer to Wanda and whispered, Sister, you're every bit as good as her. If you grow up, you'll definitely surpass her in every way. Then, I'll help you take down Big Brother Nian. Bang! Without even seeing Wanda's move, Pietro suddenly fell to the ground, his face pale. He clutched his stomach and gasped. A faint blush faded in the air. Pietro's face was mournful. He'd agreed not to use his powers outside. But Pietro knew his sister Wanda was truly pissed this time. In the past, no matter how antics he'd acted, Wanda would just reprimand him at most. This was the first time she'd taken action. Wanda stood aside, a fierce, cold crimson flashing across her eyes once again. Simply being his maid, staying by his side was enough. As for the future mistress, whoever she was, she didn't care. Wanda clenched her fists, repeating this to herself. As if to signal restraint, the crimson girl's necklace pendant flickered a seductive crimson beneath her collar. Then I'm here, boss, Xinian whispered softly to the green-haired girl before him. Stop wasting time. Lorna snorted softly, her eyelashes trembling slightly without opening her eyes, her fists clenched tighter. She was clearly more mature and domineering than before. Yet, Xinian still found the handsome woman in men's clothing adorable. Xinian placed Lorna's feet on the ground, his hands supporting the armrests of the chair in front of him, and gently leaned forward. As their faces drew closer, they could clearly feel each other's slightly burning breath and their unique aura. The tips of their noses touched lightly, and just when Nian wanted to go a step further, the delicate and indifferent face suddenly turned sideways. Boss. You won't regret it, will you? Nian blinked. No, I just suddenly wanted to smoke. Luna still didn't open her eyes. She took out an ordinary lollipop from her suit jacket pocket, peeled off the plastic wrap skillfully, opened her little mouth and gently held a round candy. She skillfully pinched a candy stick with 2 fingers of her right hand, and licked the candy lightly with her little tongue. The soft pink was wrapped in a layer of light water, and she smeared it on the dark red soft lips. Under the syrup, the dark red lips became more and more bright, outlining an attractive curve, and the corners of the mouth were still unruly. Nian was stunned for a moment. Click! With a crisp sound, Luna suddenly bit the candy on the lollipop, leaving only the empty candy stick in her hand, and muttered softly, Little brother, wait for me to finish smoking. Woo. Her mouth was suddenly blocked, and Luna opened her eyes abruptly. Her light green eyes were like a mirror, reflecting the boy's face. In the end, Luna still didn't have time to finish the candy. Xinian just felt that it was probably the sweetest candy he had ever eaten. 5 minutes later, Xinian's hair turned light green, and he sat back on his sofa with the heroic girl sitting on his lap. But the boss's aura and domineering attitude were gone, and his body was as soft as water. He had to rely on Xinian to support his slender waist to keep steady. Don't be complacent, I will always be your boss. Luna was dissatisfied and reluctant. She gently bit her lower lip with a faded lipstick color and buried her face in Xinian's chest. Yes, of course you're my boss, forever. Xinian gently embraced the larger green-haired girl, feeling a mixture of laughter and tears. Lorna, the boss, never give in. By the way, boss, there's something I must tell you, Xinian, now taking the initiative, said seriously, as if fully committed to his role. What is it? Lorna asked. Xinian then told Lorna about his fourth permanent death eye ability and the foreboding image of death he had seen on Pietro tonight. Pietro, death? Lorna listened, her mind poring over something, without any overreaction. This was why Xinian mentioned it to Lorna instead of Wanda. Telling Wanda, the maid, would only make her overly worried. Lorna, on the other hand, had been in society since childhood, self-made, having experienced countless ups and downs. She was independent-minded, and nothing could sway her. What are you going to do? Lorna asked softly. Watch from the sidelines, Xinian replied quickly. I originally wanted to lock Pietro up, perhaps by putting him in the devouring dimension. But then I realized we could control him temporarily, but not forever. Xinian analyzed. In that case, why not let Pietro follow his destined trajectory? We can observe him from the shadows and promptly address the root cause of Pietro's death. I agree with you. Lorna nodded, pondering calmly. With Pietro's abilities, if it's not a physical condition, then there's only one possibility, the probability of death. Xinian added, I had the Alice confirm. Given Pietro's excellent physical condition and sufficiently stable mutant genes, it's unlikely he'll develop a sudden illness or something within 10 years. Then there's only one possibility. Lorna stood up slightly, locking eyes with Xinian. That's right, Xinian nodded, adding gravely, if Pietro dies in the near future, there's only one possibility, murder. Lorna's eyes flashed coldly. No matter what, Pietro was her brother. Don't worry, I understand death all too well, Nian said with a smile. He was the person most deeply entangled with death in the world, bar none. His rebirth proved that fate can be changed, death can be reversed. Even the Ancient One couldn't predict the most accurate future. As long as something hasn't happened yet, he could use some measures and abilities to overturn it. Thus, 3 years later, the invincible boss and his younger brother reunited after a long absence. Chapter 339 The Late Ultron. On the night Nian reunited with Polaris Lorna. In New York, at the Avengers headquarters, in the reception hall on the middle floor. There was no music, no lights, only the moon outside and the neon light shining through the large floor-to-ceiling windows. What's going on? Can someone tell me? Thor was wearing his usual silver armor, a bright red cape, and holding Stormbreaker, a replacement for Thor's hammer after it was crushed. He hadn't expected that after not paying attention to the situation on Earth for a while, the Avengers had already gone through a huge turmoil in the past few days. In response to Thor's question, on the sofa in the hall, two men, wearing a designer suit and ordinary work clothes respectively, were silent. Apart from the three people, there were no other members in the huge place, which seemed extremely deserted. As you can see, Tony Stark shrugged, breaking the silence. Steve, Cap, and I have had a complete falling out. Now, Banner and I are pretty much the only ones left in the Avengers. Falling out? Why? Thor's eyes widened like cowbells, a flash of lightning blazing within him. Tony Stark clasped his hands together and made no reply. Thor was about to press the issue, but Dr. Banner sighed and spoke in Tony Stark's place. Don't ask, Thor. He doesn't want to. What about Gwen? You recruited her, Tony. Did they have a falling out too? Thor still had high hopes for Gwen. Her well-rounded and superior abilities and character, coupled with her diligence and sense of responsibility, made her a perfect hero. It could be said that half of the Avengers were previously eccentric or comedic, with Gwen being one of the few normal members. She resigned. Tony Stark let out a long breath, rubbing his temples. But I found a new talent. Maybe I can bring him in to fill the vacancy in the league. Now that most of the members are gone, how can one fill the gap? I'm often away from Earth, Thor questioned again. Tony Stark was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "It seems we have no choice but to restart that plan." Dr. Banner shuddered and looked at Tony solemnly. "You mean that?" "Yes." Tony Stark nodded. 3 years ago, he had an idea and a plan. He wanted to fully arm the Earth with Iron Man armor, using an advanced artificial intelligence based on Jarvis as the central control. However, due to the large number of heroes on Earth, the plan was abandoned. Now, with the Justice League missing and the Avengers falling apart, it's time to restart the plan. "Tony, have you made up your mind?" Dr. Banner asked solemnly, as if to reaffirm his decision. "It's decided. The reboot will begin tonight." Tony Stark replied confidently. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Thor raised a brow. Tony Stark's face lit up with pride again, and he smiled and said, "We created it together. I'm naming it Ultron." Elsewhere, Peter Parker, after finishing dinner with Nian and Gwen, was walking alone back to his Aunt May's house in Queens, backpack on his back. Halfway there, Peter Parker seemed to sense something. With a light leap, he leaped from a streetlight to the wall of a nearby building, nimbly and swiftly reaching the third-floor roof. "What's going on there?" Peter Parker looked toward an empty bank on the next street. He saw several mysterious men in black, wearing masks, wielding strange weapons, firing lasers to cut through the ATM machines and stuffing handfuls of cash into sacks. "Are they robbing the bank?" Peter Parker's eyes widened with excitement. His chance to shine had finally come. The next morning. Washington, a suburban villa. "And I won't be back for lunch. Wanda, open the door to New York for me." After washing up and finishing breakfast, Nian said to the two women in the house, one young and one adult. "What about dinner?" Diana sat elegantly on the living room sofa, legs crossed, like a flawless goddess sculpture, her undisguised white hair tied in a wifely headband. Her flawless, delicate face lowered as she read a professional book. She asked in a slow voice. "Dinner, depends," Nian said, waving her hand to summon her magic cloak and changing into her outdoor shoes at the door. "Be safe," Diana nodded, as if she knew what Nian was going to do, without further questioning. "Master." Wanda, her hands still wet, hurried out of the kitchen. She looked at Nian preparing to leave, her lips hesitant to speak. Her hair was tied with a red ribbon, a few strands of crimson hair, stained with sweat, stained her fair cheeks. "Wanda, you, stay home today and wait for me to come back." Nian scratched her nose with his finger, rubbing her head with a touch of affection as he admonished her. With that, Nian turned and took a step, stepping into the portal Wanda had opened earlier and disappearing into the swirling sparks. "Miss Diana, the young master." Wanda clutched her chest, looking at Diana, who was still sitting calmly on the sofa behind her. "Don't worry, Wanda." Diana flipped through the pages of the book and whispered, "In New York, there are just some company matters to deal with. Alice will be watching over them. He's been lying down for so long, let him get some exercise outside." Wanda clenched her fist slightly, feeling that the young master Nian was hiding something from her. On the other side of the portal. Future Chronicle headquarters, in a top-floor office. Sparks spun rapidly low in the living room. Nian, stepping through the portal, was stunned. Deep in the office, which resembled a luxurious suite, a tall, voluptuous woman sat up on an oversized round bed. The girl rubbed her messy dark green hair with one hand, her bare feet gently tapping on the floor. That wasn't the point. The point was that she was wearing only a white shirt, the collar open and tilted to the side, revealing the perfectly curvaceous shape of her collarbone and left shoulder. The hem of the shirt barely reached her thighs, exposing two slender, well-proportioned legs. In the morning light outside the window, a shimmering whiteness. Seeing Nian emerge from the portal, the green-haired girl's lips curled up, and she casually waved, "Good morning, little brother." Before she could finish her words, Nian suddenly rushed forward and pinned her down again. Even though nothing had happened last night, and she was here for other reasons, but, if Wanda saw her former deskmate, now her younger sister, lying in bed, Nian couldn't even imagine the consequences. Chapter 340. My name is Magneto. Plop, plop, plop. Xinian's heartbeat accelerated as he blocked the green-haired girl's body. Terrified. Behind him, in the living room, a flurry of sparks rustled onto the floor. Then, the circular portal in the low sky began to shrink until it vanished from the center of the living room, the last sparks extinguished in the air. Xinian finally breathed a sigh of relief. It feels good, doesn't it? The girl asked calmly, gazing at him with a half-smile. Not bad. Xinian replied instinctively. The next moment, the young man flew backwards from the bed, evidently from a vicious kick. Xinian lay on his back, and then a bare foot pressed hard against his chest. Little brother, are you hormonally aroused so early in the morning? Lorna snorted in disapproval. She stepped on Xinian, leaning forward, her hand resting on his bent right leg, and stared down at him. Xinian remained silent, her gaze unconsciously darting upwards. Lorna was also stunned for a moment, then realized something was amiss. Boss, you should change your clothes first, Xinian kindly reminded her. The morning's farce was over. When Lorna emerged from the shower, aside from her still damp dark green hair, she was dressed in a formal, neat suit jacket and black trousers, looking both beautiful and dashing. If you dare tell anyone about what just happened, you're dead. Lorna patted her suit jacket with both hands, her pale green eyes glaring sharply at Xinian. Xinian raised his hand and said sternly, I promise to take this secret to my grave. If I can die. Shame and anger flashed across Lorna's eyes. If it had been anyone else, 3 deaths wouldn't have been enough, but it had to be this idiotic little brother. Forget everything you just saw. Lorna added. Boss, that's a bit much? Xinian blinked helplessly. After all, that memory was too etched. Under Lorna's icy gaze, Xinian quickly corrected himself, saying, Try to forget it. Alright, let's get back to the point, Lorna snorted. Xinian breathed a sigh of relief, snapping his fingers and asking, Alice, how are you doing? The curtains automatically drew back halfway, dimming the room to a more comfortable level. Alice's sweet voice echoed from the room. Target number 1, Pietro, returned home last night and played video games until 2 in the morning. After falling asleep, he hasn't woken up yet. A virtual projection appeared before Xinian and Lorna. In a single room, Pietro lay soundly asleep in bed, his silver hair a mess, a game controller tossed carelessly on the floor beside him. Pietro was oblivious to the premonition of his own death and the secretive surveillance. His sleeping position is quite similar to yours. We're definitely a family, Xinian couldn't help but smile. Lorna glared at him, and Xinian finally calmed down. However, one thing is certain. The event that most likely led to Pietro's death has clearly not yet occurred, and there are no clues. Where's target number 2? Xinian asked. I'm preparing to report to you. The AI Alice replied, late last night, at 10:05, target number 2, Peter Parker, witnessed a group of 4 masked assailants using a suspected alien weapon to destroy the central bank ATM on 10th Street in Queens. When Peter Parker stepped forward to stop them, an argument ensued. The alien weapon eventually went out of control, causing the bank and a small convenience store next to it to collapse. No one was injured. The virtual projection also played the New York Morning News, showing Spider-Man fighting the assailants. Last night? Why are you telling me now? Xinian asked gravely. Alice replied, as if aggrieved, the owner was already asleep at home at the time. I figured the situation was under control, so I didn't wake you. I know about this, Lorna said from the side. Okay. Xinian shrugged and asked, what's the situation now? Alice, just now, Peter Parker spotted the suspected robbers and boarded a small to medium-sized tourist boat in Haikou, New York, carrying 500 passengers. Give me the exact address, Xinian thought for a moment and said directly. Do you need me to come with you? Lorna asked. No, Xinian shook his head. You stay here and keep a close eye on Pietro 1. Have Alice notify me if anything happens. I'll go to number 2 to confirm something. With that, Xinian was about to leave in a hurry. Wait a moment, Lorna called out to him. Xinian turned back in confusion, only to see Lorna lick her soft lips, making them appear translucent and shiny from the moisture. Lorna exhaled, looked him straight in the eye, and said, I think you need this. Xinian sighed with heartfelt emotion. Truly, you're worthy of being my boss. You understand so well. Haikou, New York, 1,000 meters offshore. The sun shone brightly, the sea shimmering as a 4-decker passenger ship, approximately 40 meters long, sailed smoothly along. Passengers inside and along the railings chatted and took photos, a scene of tranquility and peace. But then, something unexpected happened. With a blazing whoosh, a beam of laser light burst forth from the interior of the ship, swirling upward and downward like a lightsaber, cleaving the entire ship in two. The crew and passengers were stunned at first, then astonished to see the metal cut in the middle of the ship melt cleanly, and the two halves of the ship began to tip into the sea. Suddenly, exclamations and screams echoed from within the ship. No, no, no. A nimble figure in a red and black Spider-Man suit leaped from the cabin. Seeing the ship, which was about to capsize because of him, Spider-Man Peter Parker felt a tingling sensation on his scalp, his heart sinking to the bottom. Remedy, quick! With the assistance of the intelligent system built into the Stark Industries Spider-Man suit, he could finally do something about it. Spider-Man quickly unleashed a flood of silk and webs, clinging the two halves of the passenger ship together. He barely managed to keep the two halves dangling in the sea, but it only managed to slow the ship's capsizing. Snap, snap, snap. The threads holding the ship in place began to snap one by one. No, no. Peter Parker's sweat soaked his spider suit with anxiety. He could only use his hands to cling to the threads at both ends, but the ship still couldn't be saved from collapse and capsize. No. Just as Spider-Man Peter Parker was about to despair, a crack. The two halves of the passenger ship, about to capsize into the sea, suddenly closed together, healing on their own, as if pushed together by an invisible hand. Spider-Man swiftly swung on the silk to the top of the passenger ship. Looking up, he saw the figure of Iron Man hovering over the sea. Mr. Stark. Spider-Man's words were on the tip of his tongue, but he quickly stopped himself. That's not Iron Man. The helmet, armor, and combat boots are all made of metal, and the overall appearance presents a cold arc of an assembly line. The being wearing this silver and cold armor can only see a pair of light blue eyes. Without any engine braking, it stands quietly in the sky. The mysterious being waved his hand downwards, and the steel bars and iron railings of the entire passenger ship automatically bent and nailed the melted cuts. The iron sheets on the ship rolled up automatically, patching every gap, and the crisis of the ship capsizing was instantly resolved. All this was done. The mysterious being glanced at Spider-Man, and was about to fly away when he was stopped by Spider-Man below. Thank you very much, sir. May I ask who you are? The figure of the mysterious being paused in the air, and his voice was thick with the texture of metal, and he responded calmly, you can call me Magneto. Chapter 341, Nian, the one who predicted death. My name is Magneto. A young man, clad in metal armor, hovered dozens of meters above the sea. His bright, pale blue eyes were calm yet commanding. With a flick of his finger, a railing on the passenger ship below instantly bent like a chain, trapping 2 or 3 men inside the cabin who were attempting to escape with alien weapons. The crisis on board was instantly averted. Peter Parker, the young Spider-Man, stood on the ship's roof, gazing up at the figure, momentarily lost in thought. The mysterious being calling himself Magneto also lowered his gaze towards Spider-Man. This was undoubtedly Nian, possessing Lorna's temporary abilities in a disguise. Under the gaze of the Death Eye, the black mist embodying the concept of death around Spider-Man shrank slightly, but it continued to slowly gather, not completely dispersing. Nian suddenly understood. This meant that the recent incident that could have led to Peter Parker's death was indeed the source of the current conflict, but the true root cause and the circumstances behind it remained unresolved. In fact, compared to Petro's impending death, Peter Parker's situation wasn't particularly critical. After all, the black fog of death wasn't abundant. Even if Nian left it alone, the chances of Peter Parker dying were extremely low. At most, he'd only be injured. Therefore, Nian's actions this time were more of a test and confirmation exercise. His understanding of the Death Eye's power had now deepened. By instantly observing the black fog, Nian could foresee impending dangers and thoroughly grasp the risk level of those around him. This was a unique form of foreknowledge. Compared to the Ancient One's complex observations of numerous timelines, the Death Eye's function was far simpler and more pure. Knowing and witnessing death in advance wasn't a terrifying prospect. As long as one bravely faced and dealt with it, Nian could help those around him escape disaster, death, always one step behind him. This was the true way to unlock the fourth permanent ability, the Death Eye. Nian, manipulating the metal armor and standing in midair, was about to depart when, as if aware of something, he suddenly glanced toward the sea. It was obvious. A golden red figure, like a small rocket, spewed a striking tail of flame as it rapidly approached the passenger ship's airspace from afar. His hand engines suddenly blasted forward, bringing Iron Man to a stop high above the sea, where he stood face to face with the armored Nian. Mr. Stark. Spider-Man's eyes widened in surprise. This time, there was no mistaking him. After all, the white light emanating from his chest and eye sockets, along with the Iron Man suit's overly flashy gold-red paint, undoubtedly revealed his identity. Nian ignored him and flew off to the side. "Wait!" Iron Man called out. "What?" Nian glanced calmly at him. "Mr. Stark, he just saved me in a whole ship." Spider-Man spoke hastily, worried about the hero he admired confronting the mysterious man who had just rescued him. "I know. I saw the live video feed on your suit," Iron Man replied, his metallic eye sockets, emitting white light, fixed their gaze on Nian, never shifting a step. Iron Man said to Nian in a deep voice, "I want to know what power you just used. I've seen something similar before. Do you know a little girl with green hair?" He paused. "No, 3 years have passed. She shouldn't be a little girl by now. I shouldn't be obligated to answer, right?" Nian said casually. Iron Man was silent for a moment, then said, "According to the current Hero Restriction Agreement, any superhuman who uses their powers without signing the agreement is violating local laws and treaties, and will be subject to a global manhunt and sanctions." Agreement. Nian scoffed. Ever since his resurrection, he had disliked this so-called agreement. Saving lives, saving the world, required advance approval from the United Council? Unable to restrict villains, so they decided to restrict superheroes? If this agreement had come out sooner, Earth would have been destroyed long ago. Why would they have waited until now? No wonder Gwen chose to leave the Avengers. This agreement has no effect on villains, it sanctions superheroes as a group and their individual justice values. Fortunately, he wasn't a superhero. Nian secretly felt lucky, ignoring Iron Man's words of persuasion, and flew off to the side. "Wait!" Iron Man flew forward, trying to reach out to stop him. But Nian, unfazed, waved his right hand back, a magnetic green glow lingering from his hand. Through the air, without even physical contact, Iron Man was instantly blown away, flying diagonally downward, slamming into the sea beside the passenger ship, sending a splash of water over 10 meters high. Mr. Stark. Spider-Man was at a loss for words as he watched Iron Man, defeated in a single blow, unable to even stand against him. "I'm fine, I'm not here myself," Iron Man said weakly as he emerged from the sea with a crash, gazing at Nian who had vanished into the sky. "Even if you were here, he probably wouldn't be able to do anything. Facing that power." At this moment, Avengers headquarters, top floor. "Tenko." Tony Stark muttered to himself, removing the remote control glasses flashing with virtual images. "What's Tenko?" Dr. Banner, looking at him from the side, asked, puzzled. Tony Stark recalled what had just happened and finally shook his head. Nothing. This was not a glorious thing. However, it was indeed difficult for him to report the wanted person who had just rescued a ship's passengers. "Anyway, Tony, we finally succeeded," Dr. Banner said excitedly. "Yes, we did." Tony Stark and he looked forward. On the workbench, a golden sphere appeared in the virtual projection. The golden sphere was hollow, as if composed of countless codes, constantly rotating and evolving, as if deducing something. "Hello, I am Ultron," a mechanical voice sounded without any emotion. "Let's implant the most core instructions into it first," Dr. Banner suggested. Tony Stark pondered for a moment, then said with a twinkle in his eyes, "Then, with saving the Earth and eliminating hidden dangers as the core of the first intelligent deduction, the plan will be named Age of Ultron." He thought for a moment and added, "Also, immediately develop a non-metallic anti-model suit." Iron Man Tony Stark was truly frightened. Future Chronicle headquarters, top floor office. Clang. Nian flew in through the open window, and the moment he landed on the floor, his helmet and armor began to foul off. The boy's eyes flickered, as if he was contemplating something. "What's wrong?" A green-haired girl, with a domineering aura and a lollipop in her mouth, stepped out and asked curiously. "It's a small matter, it's resolved," Nian replied in a low voice. The unexpected encounter with Iron Man had suddenly reminded him of a way to deal with the agreement. Chapter 342, Magnetism's Dominance. In the top floor office at Future Chronicle headquarters, the window behind him closed automatically. Xinian turned to Lorna, who was inside, and asked, "How's things going over there?" "Look, he's still sleeping," Lorna said, pursing her lips boredly, gesturing at the virtual projection. The surveillance camera showed Pietro still sleeping in bed, though his position had changed. Could this guy have died in his sleep? Xinian chuckled. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Xinian suggested, "Boss, while we have some free time, let's build something." "What? Do you need me?" Lorna gave him a quizzical look. Xinian nodded. "Building a human? Of course I need you." With a soft chime, the tip of a metal knife hovered just above the pupil of Xinian's left eye. Lorna crossed her legs and asked sternly, "Brother, tell me again, what are you going to build?" Xinian swallowed hard and said quickly, "A slip of the tongue? Not really a slip of the tongue. It's indeed a human, but not the kind you're thinking of." "What kind?" Lorna frowned slightly. She didn't know why, but she felt a strange sense of disappointment. Hours passed, from morning to afternoon. "Boss, hold on a little longer. Push harder. This is tiring, it hurts my back." "Tisk, isn't it a body of steel?" The black-haired boy and the green-haired girl were nearly exhausted, sweating profusely. Lorna had even taken off her suit jacket, wearing only a thin white shirt. A few strands of dark green clung to her fair cheeks, and her small mouth exhaled hot air, looking quite charming. Xinian had no time to admire her, and he sat down on the floor in exhaustion. Both hands, shrouded in green magnetic currents, moved forward, exerting their combined power on a petite metallic form. It was a metal statue in the shape of a young girl, her limbs flowing like an assembly line, her expression and anthropomorphism utterly lifelike. If it were ordinary metal, polishing wouldn't take much time, but the material in question was vibranium. The hardest metal on Earth, bar none. With Earth's current technological capabilities, vibranium is simply impossible to melt, and even alien technology struggles to process it. Even with the ability to manipulate metal, altering vibranium's structure alone would be difficult. Only the combined power of Xinian and Lorna could achieve this feat, and the vibranium girl's body was sculpted to anthropomorphic form. "Why did you suddenly want to create such a human?" Lorna looked at the vibranium girl she had helped create, a sense of accomplishment evident on her face, and then asked in confusion. Xinian wiped his sweat and casually replied, "No particular idea. I just have vibranium, the manpower, and the time, and I just wanted to make one for fun." Lorna fell silent. Then, Lorna pounced forward, opened her tiny mouth, and bit Xinian's neck. "You think I'm your laborer, huh? I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare." After a few moments of commotion, Xinian managed to renew his temporary ability to control metal. "Can this thing move?" Lorna asked curiously, looking at the vibranium girl statue. "No," Xinian replied flatly. Previously, the so-called Vision, the vibranium-made robots, were actually modified from the Iron Man suit. This one, however, was built from a real human body. Because of this, it couldn't interact like other robots. "This is a collector's item," Xinian said with a faint smile, tapping the vibranium girl statue, which looked like a high-end made figurine. Oh, Lorna's interest suddenly waned. At this moment, she suddenly froze, and touched her chest as if aware of something. Beneath her white shirt, the metal necklace pendant hanging around Lorna's neck flickered a faint yellow light, then quickly went out. Lorna touched her soul necklace, then looked at the vibranium girl statue that Xinian was hammering at, wondering what she was thinking. That night, in New York City, 1,000 meters above, an unmanned fighter jet, in stealth mode, was automatically heading for its system-programmed destination. Inside the cabin. "This is rich." A middle-aged man opened a box, looking at the box full of steel armor energy tank cores overflowing with white light, his face filled with ecstasy. At the same time, on the hull of the unmanned fighter jet, on the belly of the aircraft, a figure wearing a cheap red tights and a cloth hood lay on the fighter jet's belly, shivering in the fierce wind. Watching the swaying lights of the city 1,000 meters below, Peter Parker chuckled bitterly. "Why would I go against the father of the girl I have a crush on at her birthday party?" "Yet, why are you here?" A calm voice echoed from the side. "Because I want to be a hero, a superhero." Peter Parker replied instinctively, then froze in shock. A familiar figure stood on the hull of the plane, its boots glued to the fuselage like a magnet. "Magneto, Mr. Magneto." Peter Parker's eyes widened in surprise. You and your cousin are really similar in temperament. You're reckless when it comes to others, risking your life if you disagree." The mysterious being shrugged, its pale blue eyes fixed on Spider-Man. "You know my cousin? Wait, you know my true identity?" Peter Parker was confused, so many shocks coming his way that he didn't know which to be surprised about. Nian lowered his eyes and asked, "Where's your old suit?" Peter Parker replied dejectedly, "Today, things went wrong, so Mr. Stark took it back. It's just a tattered piece of clothing, no need to be dreadful," Nian consoled him. Peter Parker was speechless. It was the first time anyone had ever described Mr. Stark's work as shabby. "By the way, Mr. Magneto," Peter Parker said anxiously, "this fighter jet is carrying the Avengers' weapons and equipment. A thief named Vulture is trying to steal it from this fighter jet." "I already know everything," Nian nodded. All of it?" Peter Parker asked incredulously. "All of it," Nian nodded. Daytime. Now that the source of Peter Parker's crisis had been discovered, the root cause was easy to find. With Alice's help, they quickly identified the supplier of the circulating alien weapons. Nicknamed Vulture, he had been responsible for managing the battlefield during the Battle of New York and clearing the wreckage of the alien spacecraft. What surprised Nian was Vulture's true identity, somewhat related to his own from 3 years ago, was one of the reasons that prompted him to intervene. "Mr. Magneto, how can I cooperate?" "Let's go together," Peter Parker said solemnly. "Just hold on to the fuselage and don't fall." As Nian spoke, his pale blue eyes shone as brightly as the night, and his outstretched right palm was enveloped in a green fluorescence. Magnetic field swirled. Nian lightly grasped the fighter, and in the next instant, the entire fighter trembled and stopped in the sky above the city. Chapter 343 Magneto Nian, the Nemesis of Steel. Thousands of meters above New York City. Whoosh! Peter Parker, crouching beneath the belly of a stealth fighter using his spider powers, froze. The wind from the sky was as frigid as ever, like invisible knives, whipping his shoddy tights and causing his face to ache even with the hood on. But the special transport aircraft, previously in stealth mode and operating autonomously, now sat motionless in the night sky. Spider-Man instinctively glanced at the engine of the nearby aircraft. The fan-like propellers continued to spin, blasting out a continuous stream of air, propelling the aircraft forward. But it was as if another force, 10 times more powerful than the aircraft's own braking, was pinning the fighter jet firmly against the city sky. A faint green glow lingered on his clenched right hand, spreading like a tidal wave. A magnetic field woven and swept outward. Nian, in his magnetic mode, seemed to be holding the fighter jet in place with his bare hands. "Mr. Magneto, so impressive." Spider-Man observed the scene in astonishment. This was even more astonishing than the moment he'd closed and repaired the shattered passenger ship during the day. Shooting down a plane with one hand, what kind of superpower was that? Spider-Man instinctively compared his long-admired Iron Man to the figure now in his life, and the scene of Iron Man being killed that morning came to mind. "Sorry, Mr. Stark, I didn't mean to," Peter Parker muttered helplessly. But then, Nian seemed to sense something and glanced toward one side of the fuselage. With a loud bang, a massive explosion erupted from within that side of the fuselage, and the aircraft's hull flew outwards in a vast expanse, billowing smoke and flames. Rumble. The aircraft, pinned aloft by the magnetic field, trembled violently. The fighter's stealth mode was lifted, and most residents of New York City looked up to see, startled, a burst of orange flames blooming in the night sky. Woo-ah! Spider-Man was flung away by the violent trembling of the fuselage, coupled with the heat and shockwaves from the explosion. Meanwhile, on the other side of the intact fuselage, a man unfurled a pair of steel wings. His feet, equipped with eagle-like claws, grabbed a crate of strategic weapons and supplies from the fighter plane, and with a flap of his wings, he soared away into the vast night sky. "It's broken." Spider-Man flipped repeatedly in the air, frantically using his web shooters. The cell clung to the fuselage, but then detached itself from the shattered pieces, sending him plummeting 1,000 meters below. In the nick of time, a metal-armored right hand reached out, grabbed Spider-Man, and tucked him under its arm. "Sorry, Mr. Magneto. I disturbed you." Spider-Man cried out in shame. "He's trying to escape." "Don't worry, he can't," Zai said in a calm voice. It had to be said that the opponent was indeed clever and decisive. Having figured out they were no match for him, He immediately created an explosion and seized the opportunity to escape. What a pity. If he had used a different temporary ability, he might have gotten away. Who is that guy? He actually froze the plane in midair. Luckily, I reacted in time. Unfolding his 4 or 5 meter long steel wings, Vulture sped away, glancing at the flaming fighter jet in the distance behind him, still terrified. Fortunately, the opponent was still too young. Just as Vulture was thinking this, he was suddenly startled to notice the scenery on both sides receding. He was clearly accelerating forward, yet his body was moving uncontrollably backward. Something was wrong. Vulture quickly realized it wasn't his body that was out of control, but the alien armor and steel wings he was wearing. No, damn it. Even with this knowledge, Vulture could only helplessly retreat back towards the fighter jet, along with the strategic supplies held in his steel claws. After all, Vulture relied solely on this alien equipment. Without it, he would be nothing more than an ordinary person. In less than 3 seconds, Vulture, guided by its steel wings and armor, abruptly returned to the interior of the aircraft, placing the strategic weapons it held onto the deck. We're done, Nian shrugged, perched atop the fighter. His left arm held Spider-Man, and his right hand, shimmering with green light, pressed downward, sending the entire damaged fighter plummeting. So strong. Spider-Man, watching the entire battle, his eyes gleamed with awe. Besides genuinely feeling the opponent's strength, he felt a familiar presence. Mr. Magneto, have we met somewhere before? Spider-Man couldn't help but ask. Maybe, Nian said casually. I'll definitely become a superhero like you. Spider-Man vowed. Nian smiled, then said hoarsely, then you've picked the wrong target. I'm not a superhero. Huh? Spider-Man Peter Parker paused. At that moment, the damaged fighter, without brakes, plummeted to a forced landing on a vacant factory floor in New York. Alright, you're alright now. Nian released Spider-Man, setting him atop the plane. Under his calm, pale blue gaze, the black mist surrounding him completely dissipated, his recent mortality rate returning to 0. Nian warned Spider-Man, don't be so reckless next time. Otherwise, you might not only fail to save the person you're trying to save, but also endanger others and yourself. Mr. Magneto, I understand. Spider-Man removed his cowl, revealing a boyish, resolute face. That's all, I've taken the rubber. Nian turned and soared into the night sky. With a flick of his finger, Vulture, carried by his steel wings, flew out of the cabin and followed closely behind him. Watching Magneto and Vulture retreat, Peter Parker, standing alone in the fighter plane, couldn't help but shout, Mr. Magneto, you said you're not a superhero, so why did you save me? There was no response. Just as the two figures vanished into the night sky, a flat voice echoed back, you'll know later. It was just a matter of saving his family, no reason needed. With a smile on his face, Nian landed with a Vulture on a deserted riverbank in an urban area. The moment he touched down, clad in a steel helmet, his eyes glowing red, and clad in patchwork alien armor, with a pair of massive steel wings slung behind him and feet shaped like cold, sharp eagle claws, the Vulture stumbled towards Nian. Want to keep going? Nian shook his head, pointing forward. The Vulture, having just taken a step, stopped 3 meters in front of him. He tapped it through the air. Instantly, the steel wings, the red helmet, the alien armor, the steel eagle claws, all crackled and fell from the Vulture's body. A middle-aged man in ordinary work clothes stood there, gazing blankly at the scrap metal on the ground. Then, dejected, he knelt in the riverbank. It wasn't even a crushing defeat, resistance and escape seemed futile, even though they knew the opponent's abilities. And precisely because they knew the opponent's abilities, Vulture felt even more desperate and desolate. The man before him was the absolute nemesis of the metal technology branch. Chapter 344, Subjugating the Villain, Ultron's Rebellion. I'm lost. Do whatever you want. Vulture dropped to his knees, his hands also resting on the ground, his head lowered. Let me ask you a question. Nian stared down at him. Did you ever think of hurting that guy? No. Vulture shook his head, gritting his teeth. It's just that he was so annoying, he kept chasing me. Okay, I saved your life. Nian believed what he said. Are you going to let me go? Vulture looked up at Nian. Nian said calmly, who said that? I'm just not going to kill you, but I'm still sending you to prison. Vulture suddenly felt that the other party was more of a villain than himself. I have another question. Nian's pale blue eyes brightened. Ask it, Vulture replied dejectedly. Why did you steal the Avenger stuff? Nian asked curiously. Of course, to arm myself and make more money. Vulture said in a deep voice. Now, the so-called heroic age is actually an era of chaos with extraordinary people emerging one after another. Without some extraordinary strength and equipment, how can you guarantee the future of yourself and your family? When he said this, he suddenly sneered. Besides, that alien weapon was originally mine. I previously contracted the post-war area inventory of the Battle of New York, but was later forcibly kicked out by SHIELD. So, after you resigned from your professorship, you became a professional garbage collector. Nian suddenly realized. Vulture was silent. It was indeed the war debris and garbage of the alien army, but who could regard it as real garbage? It was a product of alien civilization that contained technological levels that exceeded the current level of the Earth. Wait a minute. Vulture was suddenly stunned for a moment, and said to Nian in surprise, You said professor just now? You know my true identity? Of course. Nian said frankly, After all, I used to be your student, Professor Adrian Toombs. Hearing this, Vulture stared at Nian. Who are you? Professor, do you still remember me? Nian smiled, reaching out to remove the iron mask, revealing a handsome, youthful face. Nian. Adrian's expression was dazed. Although several years had passed, he clearly still remembered the boy he had taught. The usually ordinary, studious high school student who, 3 years ago, suddenly and without warning, dropped out. Long time no see, Professor, Nian greeted with a faint smile. I didn't expect it to be you, Adrian muttered to himself, suddenly feeling a little ashamed. After all, 3 years ago, he had stood at the sacred podium, but now, looking back, he found his hands dirty, mired in the quagmire, engaged in the dark business of theft and crime. Nian, as if knowing his thoughts, said, You can still turn back, get on the right track, and realize your talents. How can I turn back? Adrian glanced down at himself and smiled bitterly. My company is in need of people who can sort out alien waste and develop and research it. Nian said seriously, I think you are suitable for the position of Director of Recycling Alien Garbage. You have alien garbage. Adrian's eyes lit up instinctively, and then he asked, What company? Future Chronicle. Nian responded bluntly. Adrian was silent. In the current Earth of the 21st century, no one doesn't know about Future Chronicle. In the past 3 years, Future Chronicle has become synonymous with cutting-edge technology. Is this God closing a door for me and opening a window for me? Adrian took a deep breath, his eyes shining again, and said to Nian in a deep voice, You can ask me to do anything, as long as I can count the alien garbage. Nian thought about it, and arranged, You go and surrender first and confess the facts of the crime. Don't worry, you will be out soon. Okay, I believe you. Adrian nodded without hesitation, stood up, and dusted his clothes. His fighting spirit had been restored. The city's neon lights were reflected on the river. Nian stood on the night-shrouded shore, watching Adrian walk alone toward the brightly lit city. Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, wasn't really a villain in the true sense of the word. He had never intended to harm anyone, having simply been misled by the alien garbage. Besides, he might be Peter Parker's future father-in-law, so Nian was willing to give him a chance. Nian withdrew his gaze, frowning slightly as he looked toward Avengers headquarters. Something felt off. Although the Avengers were now a name only and severely understaffed, Iron Man would at least come and check on the destruction of the Avengers supply planes, right? But so far, the Avengers hadn't reacted to what was happening here. This could only mean that he had likely encountered something much more serious. Suddenly, Nian's phone beeped. The voice of the artificial intelligence Alice rang out, Master, there's something going on with Lorna. Nian's face slightly condensed, and he said in a deep voice, I'll be back right away. At the same time, in the Avengers headquarters building, there was no light in the entire building. The top floor, dedicated to superheroes, the huge and luxurious indoor venue was in a mess. The ceiling, floor, and walls were full of dents and charred marks, and there were broken glass and furniture fragments everywhere. Obviously, there had just been a battle here. Whoosh! Thor exhaled a breath of hot air, his hair disheveled, his red cape hanging down, and he maintained his hammer-swinging attack posture. The Stormbreaker held in his right hand smashed a hole in the floor with the end of the hammer, and in the hole lay a silver Iron Man with electricity. It was clearly the Iron Man suit of Stark Industries, an early Mark model that had not yet been painted. The unmanned Iron Man suit had its chest already smashed by the hammer, and half of the eye of the Iron Head was glowing, staring at Thor indifferently. God? It made an extremely sharp and hoarse sound. Nearby, a 2 or 3 meter tall green monster roared, and with its broad, rough hands, it tore apart another Iron Man suit that had attempted to attack it. Only a single Iron Head remained, rolling to the ground like a ball, emitting a hoarse, sharp voice. Humanity is a cancer. We must eliminate it to save the world. The Iron Head finished its words. Boom. The Hulk crushed the Iron Head in the floor together with his foot. Tony, what the hell is going on? Why is your Iron Man suit attacking us? Thor cried in confusion. Not far away, Tony Stark was not wearing the Iron Man suit, only his right hand covered with the armored hand engine. He held on to the wall, looking at the Iron Head crushed by the Hulk, and smiled bitterly. This is bad. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345, The Heart of the North Star, The Dying City. At Future Chronicle headquarters, in the top floor office, there was a clang. Nian, clad in steel armor, descended from the sky onto a side balcony. The floor-to-ceiling windows opened, and a green-haired woman in a men's suit quickly emerged. Instantly, Nian realized something had changed with target number 1. After all, with his pride, the boss wouldn't go out of his way to greet a subordinate like him. As expected, Lorna said calmly, Pietro's missing. Gone. Nian's face darkened as he entered the office, which resembled a luxurious suite. Master, this is the security footage from target number 1's home 5 minutes ago, Alice reported quickly, bringing up a virtual projection. The camera showed the view from Pietro's room. 5 minutes ago, Pietro, in his pajamas, sat cross-legged on his bed, playing a video game. His hands clattered, their fingers blurring into blurry afterimage, so fast that even the game character couldn't keep up. Just then, Pietro glanced down at the digital watch on his left wrist, his face changing slightly as if a memory had occurred. He tossed the battle-damaged controller aside, and then, before the controller even hit the ground, in the next frame of the surveillance video, Pietro vanished from the bed, his entire body seemingly vaporized. Anyone else watching this scene in the surveillance video would likely be horrified. But Nian was clearly accustomed to extraordinary things. Where did this kid go, so late at night? Nian muttered to himself. He and Lorna both knew full well that Pietro hadn't vanished. It was simply that his speed had surpassed the frame rate the surveillance camera could capture. Since Pietro wasn't visible in the house, it meant he'd left the house. Boss, don't worry, I'll find him, Nian said, looking at Lorna standing nearby. He reached out and grasped her clenched right hand, offering a reassuring reassurance. He knew that despite Lorna's domineering demeanor and seemingly indifferent attitude, she was actually the same person she had been 3 years ago, cold on the outside but warm on the inside, deeply concerned for her family. Therefore, when dealing with the current situation, I lose a little of my usual calm and composure. But it's okay. Nian smiled. If you can't do something, let me help you achieve it. That's my duty. Lorna didn't shake off Nian's hand as usual, letting the boy hold it gently. While Nian was watching the virtual projection, Lorna glanced at the boy's handsome face, watching him take this matter seriously as if it were his own. She had never imagined that she, who had always been independent and believed she could accomplish anything on her own, would one day become so dependent on others. Every time he was around, Lorna found herself becoming weak. The hard shell she had worn since childhood was always inadvertently peeled away by him, revealing the softness within. Because he's my little brother, it's okay. Every time, Lorna would use this as a comforting thought, and then, step by step, she would fall in love with him. Whenever something happened, she would first think of this most special little brother, instinctively wanting to rely on him. Lorna discovered that when Nian was around, she felt more like a woman. So, that's how it is. Lorna whispered to herself, her pale green eyes clear and luminous, as if she had suddenly grasped something. Boss, what are you talking about? Nian gave her a blank look, then issued an order to Alice. Use all satellites from the future era to scan the global surveillance network and locate Pietro as quickly as possible. Nothing. Lorna shook her head gently, the corners of her mouth curling up slightly. Her right hand, clenched into a fist, relaxed, letting Nian's large hand envelop it. Sokovia. This is a small, mountainous, impoverished, unstable, resource-poor country in the heart of Eastern Europe. While it might be called a country, it's actually the size of a city. Now, inside Sokovia, a man and woman, wearing peaked caps and masks, walked hand in hand on the street, like tourists from a foreign land, their pale green and pale blue eyes visible, respectively. Is Pietro really here? His girlfriend asked curiously, looking around. Alice tracked the location of his phone. Right here, the overly young male companion shrugged, a touch surprised. Their current location was nearly 13 time zones behind New York, more than a hemisphere away. So, even though it was still night in New York, it was already a new day in Sokovia. The sun was rising from the snow-capped mountains in the east, casting brilliant golden rays across the city, and the cold, white mist of the early morning air melted away. Only Pietro had suddenly traveled this far in less than 5 minutes. Brother, I don't think something's right. I feel very uncomfortable here, Lorna whispered, leaning slightly closer to Nian. I feel the same way. Nian narrowed his eyes slightly, his spider sense radiating outwards. He could see a number of ragged locals standing behind them, observing them with blank, eerie eyes. The streets were narrow and dilapidated, and the buildings looked like they were left over from World War II, carrying the air of gunpowder. Only a smattering of local residents could be seen, and the word prosperous was far from being tangible. Add to that the snow-capped mountains surrounding the city, and it looked more like a vast urban prison than a paradise. Just then, from the corner of a street ahead, a burst of cheerful voices suddenly rang out, dispelling the city's cold and oppressive atmosphere. Nian and Lorna exchanged glances and quickened their pace. At a nearby street corner, a dozen or so local children in ragged clothes surrounded a silver-haired boy wearing goggles. Their gray faces, filled with anticipation, stretched out their arms and waved forward. Don't worry, everyone gets a share, everyone gets a share. Pietro pulled handfuls of candy from his windbreaker pocket and stuffed them into the children's hands. Watching this scene from the wall, Nian and Lorna exchanged a glance. So, that was why they were so anxious to leave? They'd thought they were in danger. Nian felt a sense of unease, but the smile quickly vanished. Under the eye of death? The black mist on Pietro's body condensed more and more, and it had completely lingered around his whole body. Not only that. Nian looked to the side of Pietro, and saw that the black mist was also lingering around a dozen children. No way. A guess flashed through Nian's mind, so he used the eye of death to observe other residents in the city. In all likelihood, they were all lingering with a black mist that symbolized the concept of death, some more and some less. Little brother, what did you see? Luna noticed that Nian's expression was not right. Nian took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "This city is the root." Chapter 346. Let's fight together. This city is the root cause, the potential source of Pietro's future death. Nian was certain of this. Even if the root cause wasn't the city itself, something terrible would happen within it, which is why the residents were collectively surrounded by a black mist of death. Verifying this was simple. Just as Nian was thinking this, a little girl carrying a basket approached. Like the locals, she was dressed in rags, her face dusty and unassuming, yet the roses she held in her basket were incredibly vibrant, emanating a delicate fragrance. The girl, with pigtails, timidly but courageously asked, "Brother, do you want to buy a bouquet for your girlfriend? Our flowers are in full bloom here." Lorna snorted, "I'm not his girlfriend." Huh? The girl's eyes widened, a look of bewilderment. Seeing her pitiful, helpless expression, Lorna suddenly regretted her words. "She's my boss, not my girlfriend." Nian smiled. He explained, then squatted down and asked gently, "How much are these flowers?" "1 cent, the flower girl said timidly. "I'll buy them all." "Is this enough?" Nian pulled a shiny green bill from his pocket. The flower girl was stunned. It was a $100 bill. Not enough. Nian pulled out a dozen more from his pocket. "Enough, enough." The girl's voice trembled. She looked at the money, but didn't dare to take it. Lorna urged, "Take it. He's a wealthy man." "Boss, that's a bit too much." Nian blinked helplessly. The flower girl hesitated, looked around nervously, and lowered her voice. $10? $10 is enough. Lorna seemed to notice something, and her beautiful eyebrows raised slightly. How many people are there in your family? Zinnian asked, a glint in his eyes. One, the flower girl said sweetly. Just me. Okay, Zinnian smiled. That's no problem. As soon as he finished speaking, Zinnian suddenly hugged the flower girl and ran towards an alley. Seeing this, not only was Luna, who was traveling with him, stunned, but also the two burly men who were secretly observing from a distance were dumbfounded. Luna reacted quickly, following closely behind Zinnian as he abducted the girl. Damn it! The two local men rushed forward. However, although they were fast enough to immediately surround the alley where Zinnian and the other man had entered, they quickly stopped in shock. There was no sign of Zinnian, the other man, or the flower girl in the alley. What the hell? It's over, the big fat sheep is gone, and the capital is gone too. The two burly men beat their chests, shaking with anger. Outside Sokovia, on the other side of the snow-capped mountains. At the foot of the mountain, beside the forest lake. His black windbreaker draped over him fell down, and Zinnian landed on the grass, holding the flower girl. Lorna, wearing metallic soled boots, her soft, dark green hair spilling from her cap, followed closely behind him as she descended from the sky. Zinnian set the pale-faced girl down and smiled. Don't worry, we're not bad people. Are you being controlled by someone? What do you mean, little brother? Lorna asked, raising an eyebrow. Zinnian replied, haven't you encountered this before in New York? Some local thugs and local gangs who control local orphans and use them to make money and fish for them. I just noticed they've been spying on us. I should have killed them. Lorna's beautiful eyes flashed coldly. It wasn't that she couldn't think of it, but she didn't want to think about it. Otherwise, she would find it difficult to suppress her murderous intent and violent temper. She hadn't been a gang leader for many years. Thank you, the flower girl thanked gratefully. Don't thank me, I was just confirming something. Zinnian shook his head. Under his deadly gaze, the thick black fog that had been lingering around the flower girl instantly dissipated as they ventured further from Sokovia. Without giving it much thought, Zinnian quickly said, Boss, take her further out, into neighboring Slovakia. I'll go back and find Pietro and reunite with you there. With that, Zinnian attempted to take flight. The next moment, a white hand grabbed hold of his black windbreaker and yanked him down from the sky. Boss, what are you doing? Zinnian plopped down on the grass, his eyes wide open. He was met with a face, even wider than the nearby peaks, a face of stunning beauty and rage. I should be the one asking you that. Little brother, what are you doing? Are you trying to get rid of me? That's not what I meant, Zinnian said with a helpless smile. What do you mean? Lorna glared at Zinnian. What did you see? Zinnian opened his mouth, finally sighing and saying with difficulty, I saw your death. Yes, Lorna, who had previously shown no signs of death, suddenly became enveloped in a black mist when they set foot in Sokovia together. Although the black mist was not large, it still indicated that Lorna was at risk of death. He had to admit that Zinnian panicked at that moment, which was why he led Lorna away, not wanting her to remain in the city. A catastrophe is about to befall Sokovia. Even a transcendental being could die there. Idiot. Zinnian was interrupted before he could finish his words. Lorna's calm face showed no trace of fear or intimidation. Instead, she stamped her foot in anger and cursed, idiot little brother. Zinnian was momentarily dazed, feeling that Lorna now resembled Wanda, who had previously called him idiot master. Your death eye ability only sees the danger and mortality risk of others, but not your own. Lorna exclaimed angrily. You're clearly in danger yourself, yet you're always looking out for others. Don't worry, there's no way I'll die, Zinnian said calmly. He truly didn't think he would, after all, with his numerous life-saving skills and methods. Damn it, how could I possibly worry about you? That's impossible. Lorna's eyes flushed slightly as she cried out, you clearly borrowed all your abilities from me, and yet you're so arrogant. Don't always go all out on your own after gaining access to the medium, leaving us behind to protect you. Zinnian was stunned. These words reminded him of someone else's before. That's right. Ancient One had once told him not to go it alone. You are my strength, and I am yours. Lorna's eyes sparkled, her fists clenched as she addressed Zinnian. You protect me, and I want to protect you too. We can trust each other, rely on each other, and fight with each other's backs. A boss and a younger brother like that are a complete team. Chapter 347 The perfect combination of mutation and technology. Looking at Luna, who was furiously berating him, Nian was stunned for a few seconds. He climbed up from the grass, scratched his head, and smiled. Boss, you really care about me so much? Polaris Luna, filled with shame and indignation, raised a white finger on her right hand, the tip of which almost touched Nian's nose. It's all you, always saying stupid things and doing foolish things. Her slightly red eyes sparkled with tears as she gritted her teeth and cried, I don't need you to protect me. I just want you to live well. At least live longer than I do. I don't want to go through what happened 3 years ago again. For 3 years, Luna had regretted every day. She regretted her decision to board the ship, which indirectly led to Nian's death, and she lived with guilt. So, a year or two ago, after leaving school in Wanda, Luna returned to New York. Unsure of what she was thinking, she eventually opened a hotel near the headquarters of Future Chronicle, founded by Nian. Now, Luna had a vague understanding. Like Wanda, she was waiting for a miracle in the future. Waiting for someone named Nian, someone who would call her boss and treat her like family. So, that night, a perfectly ordinary night, she saw a familiar black-haired boy enter the hotel. At that moment, Lorna felt her heart, frozen for 3 years, begin to beat again with a powerful throb. That day, Polaris found its destiny. Boss, I know where I was wrong. Thank you for scolding me and waking me up. Nian took a deep breath. He simply thought that by taking more risks himself, he could reduce the risk factor for those around him. But the people around him were no ordinary people. They were also superheroes, gifted and extraordinary beings. He should trust them more and rely on them appropriately. Because they were a whole, indispensable to each other, an inseparable whole. Let's go together. Nian grabbed Lorna's hand, pointing at him, and said calmly and forcefully. Wouldn't it have been better to do this earlier? Lorna snorted, not shaking his hand off. Nian turned to the flower girl beside him and said firmly, Little sister, stay here. We'll definitely come back for you when we're done. The flower girl nodded obediently. I won't run away. Alice, send a package to this address. Nian thought for a moment and quickly gave an order. Alice, okay, master. Let's go. Nian and Lorna exchanged a glance. They nodded and prepared to return to Sokovia. But then, the flower girl hesitated, then shouted, Go back. Watch out for the city. The city. Nian was stunned. The flower girl's face, dusty and dirty, pale with fear, recalled, when I was a child, I got lost and accidentally entered the underground of Sokovia. There, I saw many glowing buildings and instruments, as well as masked guards in armed uniforms. They all had a strange red skull symbol on their clothes. Whoosh! Hand in hand, Nian and Luna took off, speeding away like a shuttle towards the other side of the snowy mountain. The flower girl watched them swiftly depart, her clasped hands pressed to her chest. God, please bless them, and make sure they return safely. At that moment, a rectangular metal object plummeted from the sky, landing in the natural lake behind the flower girl, sending up a cloud of water. The flower girl's face paled as she turned to look. With a crashing sound, a massive yellow metal mechanical hand burst from the lake's surface, pressing down on the grassy shore. An even larger shadow surfaced from the lake's depths. The flower girl looked up in surprise. It was an armored robot, nearly 2 stories tall, painted yellow, with a prominent Future Chronicle logo adorning its left chest. Its electronic eyes quickly scanned the surroundings. The armored robot's right steel arm bore a cannon barrel far exceeding the caliber of a tank, its demeanor trembling. Its electronic eyes whirred, and after confirming there was no danger, it disarmed its defensive mode. Looking at the pale-faced girl, it bared its steel teeth in a friendly manner. I'm the Future Chronicles Rescue Robot, Transformer Series, Model 007. You can call me Bumblebee. High above the snowy mountains, gazing at the small country city in the distance shrouded in a black fog of death, Nian, approaching, pondered, Alice, get me a set of combat uniforms. And also for the lady next to me. Alice understood his meaning and quickly replied, right away, master. Clothes. Lorna glanced at him in surprise. Since we're going to fight, of course I'm fully armed, Nian said matter-of-factly. Over the past 3 years, relying on his legacy and Alice's management, the Future Chronicle has expanded into more areas than meets the eye. Meanwhile, Above Earth, in low orbit, a silver satellite bearing the Future Chronicle logo launched, dropping two sharp, gleaming packages towards southern Europe. Future Chronicle Industrial Manufacturing. The object had its own rear-end engine, like a small rocket, launching towards its target. Here it comes. Nian, who was explaining this to Lorna, looked up at two flashes of light appearing in the sky. Swish! One of the flashes hit Nian's body. Under its own program, Nanomodel stretched and formed itself, enveloping him at breakneck speed. It was a nanosuit. Unlike the Mark model invented by Stark, this suit looked more like a modified spider armor suit, lacking the spider spears and mesh. It was form-fitting and lightweight, with a streamlined design from head to toe. The central circular groove, housing the engine core, glowed blue. It felt more like a form-fitting, soft metal garment than armor. Since Future Era possessed the technology to design and manufacture nanosuits, Nian would naturally build one for fun. Manufacturing a nanosuit was incredibly simple for the current Future Era. As for energy, they could simply tap into the infinite energy within the space gem, eliminating the need for new elements like Stark Industries' next door. The nanosuit Nian donned was a dark black. Next to him, Luna was struck by a flash of light, and the nanomodel adhered to her body, expanding to form a complete set of white, female armor. The nanosuits had their own engines, and the moment they were donned, the engines beneath their feet erupted. Using magnetic fields to fly, Nian and Luna's speed soared to a new level. The ability to control metal combined with the nanomodel suits, this is the perfect combination of mutation and technology. Chapter 348, Shame of the Speedsters, thanks to the Novus Village Chief Tapel for being the leader. Whoosh! Clang! Two figures descended from the sky in Sokovia. One was an Iron Man clad in red-gold armor, the other a blonde, burly man in silver armor. These were New York's artificial gods, the future god kings of the divine realm. The local residents of Sokovia cast surprised and skeptical glances at them. Just the two of us. Thor, the god of thunder, asked, shaking his Stormbreaker. Isn't there another one? Iron Man Tony Stark retorted. As if to confirm his words, a scorching gust of wind swept down. A black fighter jet emerged from stealth mode, hovering dozens of meters above the city. The hatch opened. A middle-aged doctor in a work jacket and jeans approached the deck and waved to the two men below. Thor couldn't help but ask, "Are you sure it's 2 + 1, not 2 - 1? Tony Stark replied, "I'm not sure, but we're truly alone now, just us." "All right," Thor shrugged, glancing around. "Then are you sure? That Ultron, is it here?" "I can't be sure either." Inside his armored suit, Tony Stark's eyes dimmed. The program for my intelligent butler, Jarvis, was devoured by the enemy. But through tracking and detection, a massive stream of Ultron's data is indeed flowing into the city. First, the Avengers fell apart, and now the AI Ultron rebelled. Even Jarvis, his constant companion, was gone. Iron Man's heart was heavy. Then we have no choice but to attack. Hopefully, the enemy isn't too numerous. Thor had barely finished speaking when, with a clang, a robot resembling Iron Man's suit, its eyes glowing red, appeared from nowhere in the city and landed 10 meters in front of Iron Man and Thor. Thor clenched his Stormbreaker and was about to strike, but a look of horror quickly crossed his resolute face. Then, clang, clang, clang. The sound of steel hitting the ground echoed continuously as steel robots landed on the ground around them, quickly surrounding the two men in a dozen numbers. Furthermore, outside, on the rooftop balconies of the surrounding buildings, robots with red electronic eyes, contrasting with the silver metallic sheen, filled the rooftops, gazing coldly at the two men and the black fighter planes. Seeing this, Thor gasped, "How could there be so many? To mass-produce so many iron soldiers in such a short period of time, this city must have a massive, state-of-the-art factory." Iron Man Tony Stark was also shocked. "This is completely bad news. It means they can produce them endlessly," Thor said with a wry smile. Looking at the clusters of iron soldiers, Tony Stark suddenly imagined a green-haired girl and a silver Iron Man. If only either of those two were here. He didn't have time to think. Dozens of iron soldiers, modeled after the Iron Man suits, descended upon them like a torrent of steel. Black fighter planes soared in the sky. A fierce battle was imminent. In the heart of Sokovia, buildings crumbled one after another. Thunder roared from the sky, and the earth trembled with a mournful cry. Strong winds swept outward, carrying waves of dust. Within, lightning flashed, Lasers crisscrossed, and from time to time, the angry roars of monsters could be heard. The entire city was in chaos. Screaming, the locals fled, trying to get as far away from the fighting in the city center as possible. But the war unfolded so quickly that many were caught up in it. Crackling. Steel teeth gnashed fiercely, their eyes gleaming red as the Iron Legion launched an indiscriminate attack. Blazing white lasers slashed through bodies and buildings alike. They intended not only to kill the advancing Avengers, but also to clear out this entire section of the city. Sizzling. At the edge of the central battlefield, just as an Iron Soldier scanned a fallen local child, a laser beam streaked forward. The child vanished into thin air. The Iron Soldier's electronic eyes swiveled blankly, and the next moment, his body slammed into the nearby wall, as if propelled at breakneck speed by an unseen force. "Are you okay?" Not far away, the scene blurred and shifted, and Pietro, wearing goggles, appeared out of thin air, holding the child. The child nodded, stunned. "I'll get you out," Pietro said, transforming into a stream of light and escaping, instantly carrying the child to the outer city several kilometers away. After dropping the child off, Pietro returned to the central battlefield, repeatedly transporting residents who hadn't had time to evacuate to safety. His speed was so rapid that neither the naked eye nor surveillance cameras could detect him, saving several people in less than a second. However, the area involved in the battle was vast, and the number of people left without time to evacuate exceeded 10,000, not to mention the threat posed by the Iron Legion's soldiers. Even Pietro was sweating with anxiety. Pietro once again returned to the edge of the battlefield, picking up a lone child. Suddenly, he noticed a crying girl 100 meters away on the same street. Behind him, an Iron Soldier raised his palm engine, accumulating energy. Danger. Pietro set the child aside and rushed forward in a flash of light, but the laser had already been fired a fraction of a second, too late. Pietro took a step, reaching the girl, and instinctively spread his arms to shield her with his body. "Wait, am I going to die here?" Pietro felt the intense heat of the approaching laser, and memories flashed through his mind faster than he could. Finally, two figures froze in his mind. One was his twin sister, Wanda. The other was a dark-haired young man. "Brother, you must make Wanda happy, or I will die with regret," Pietro thought indignantly. But then, he froze again. Pietro's eyes widened, but he wasn't pierced by the laser. A piece of silver metal, just in time, blocked the laser beam. Normally, even titanium would be pierced by the laser, but this piece of metal, made of an unknown material, withstood the laser's impact intact. With a swish, the silver metal flew forward on its own, deflecting the laser beam like a bullet piercing the engine of the Iron Soldier. With a boom, the Iron Soldier exploded. With a whoosh, the metal flew back above Pietro's head, circling around a dark being. The figure turned off the engine of his suit, stood still in the air, and gently fell. "Thank you," Pietro said gratefully, about to express his gratitude. The being in the dark suit reached out to catch the vibranium piece and said coldly, "If you die like this, you will be a disgrace to the speedsters." Pietro was stunned. Although it was a scolding, he felt an inexplicable warmth. The other party gave him a familiar feeling, and the tone and attitude were extremely similar to his sister Wanda. Chapter 349, The Sweeping Duo. Just now, even if you blocked it with your body, the laser beam would have pierced you and continued through the girl you thought you were protecting. A mysterious young man in a dark metal battlesuit gently descended from the sky, sending up a cloud of fine sand. He spoke coldly to the stunned Pietro, "Being too reckless, and reckless won't only fail to save others, it'll kill you too." Faced with someone who in some ways resembled his sister, Wanda, Pietro didn't dare to object. He scratched his head and said, "I didn't think too much about it just now. I just didn't have time, so I acted instinctively." "That just means you weren't fast enough," Nian said coldly. Pietro was stunned for a moment. He lowered his eyes, thinking seriously, then looked at Nian again. "I know my problem." Pietro suddenly realized. Ever since awakening his abilities, he had been overly arrogant, believing his extreme speed would make him invincible. But just now, he had indeed been insufficiently fast. Otherwise, even if he had been reckless, he wouldn't have been too late to worry about. If he's fast enough, space and time will stop for him. "I'll run even faster later," Pietro said in a deep voice, his eyes firm. Nian nodded, unwavering in his words. Go. Go to the outskirts of the city. Don't enter the inner war zone. The fighting here is a little too early for you. But there are still many people who haven't had time to evacuate, and the central war zone inside. Pietro picked up the little girl beside him and looked worriedly at the outskirts and the city filled with flames and smoke. Don't worry about it. Leave everything to me, Nian said casually but confidently. Everything. Pietro swallowed. Without waiting for Nian's response, clang, clang, clang. Steel clashed violently with the ground. A 1.8-meter tall, steel-clad soldier, clad in a steel battlesuit, descended from the sky, his eyes a cold electronic red, his chest gleaming with the white glow of an engine. He surrounded Nian, Pietro, and the others. 10 of them, at a glance. The Iron Soldiers collectively scanned and locked onto several people, their engines igniting lasers as they sped forward. Oh no. Pietro, cradling the trembling little girl, his face grim, quickly declared, Sir, there are too many of them. Let's attack together, or I'll get you out of here. Before he could finish his words, bang. Nian made no movement, his body the center. As if an invisible shockwave had swept outward, the Iron Soldiers surrounding them were instantly sent flying backwards. Their highly engineered steel bodies disintegrated mid-air, and by the time they were flung dozens of meters away, they had become a pile of scrap metal. The scene was a bit like a one-click factory reset. 10 Iron Soldiers were instantly disintegrated and defeated. Watching the battle, which ended in a second, Pietro's eyes widened as he gazed at the luminous green light radiating nearby. Nian's hands, clad in dark nanometal, were shrouded in a green mist. That faint green seemed to hold immense energy, the mysteries of the universe, emanating an aura powerful enough to make metal submit and implode. I told you, leave everything to me, Nian repeated. I understand. You must be careful. Pietro gave Nian a deep look, then, clutching the little girl, took a step forward and instantly vanished from view. Finally, Nian muttered to himself with a sigh of relief. He had just confirmed it. After blocking the laser beam that threatened his life, as if fate had been reversed, Pietro's concept of death had largely dissipated, leaving only a faint black mist. But even as Pietro journeyed to the outskirts of the city, the faint black mist lingered. Nian recalled the flower girl's final words to them, a thoughtful look in his eyes. A steel soldier hid in a building not far away, secretly watching Nian who stayed on the street, and slowly raised his right hand, and the palm engine was about to release a laser beam. Swish! A blue laser was one step faster, passing diagonally over the street and accurately hitting the chest of the steel soldier, causing him to explode like a human bomb. Bang! Wearing the same style of white nano-combat suit, with a perfect chest curve, the tall and petite figure fell behind Nian. This is really fun. Luna, who appeared, chuckled. It was obvious that she had liked the function of the suit. She did not forget to correct Nian, leave everything to us. Indeed, it won't work without a boss. Nian agreed with a smile. Brother, let's have a blast. Lorna clenched her fists, her beautiful eyes glowing green beneath her form-fitting nanosuit. Don't compete with me for monsters. I'm going to kill 100. Nian nodded, looked around, and issued a command. Alice, send more rescuers, preferably medical ones, to help the local residents evacuate to the outskirts of the city. Yes, Master, Alice replied quickly. Soon after, metal packages, like Space Express deliveries, dropped down into the city, each deploying a parachute for an emergency landing. The metal packages, about the size of a briefcase, landed next to the residents who hadn't had time to evacuate. Upon landing, they automatically opened and inflated from their boxes, forming a 2-meter tall white inflatable man. The white man was chubby, with short legs and a pair of small black eyes. The crown logo of Future Chronicles was also emblazoned on his left chest. Even his voice was soft and cute, giving off a sense of intimacy and security. I'm Future Chronicles Rescue Robot, Home Use Series, Model 078. You can call me Little White. Zizzy. Amid the wreckage of the Iron Soldier, recently disintegrated by Nian's magnetic field, a glowing steel head's eyes flickered red as it watched Nian and Lorna, who had intervened from the brink of battle and begun to turn the tide. In Sokovia, in the heart of the city, beneath the surface, a unique steel mechanical being clenched its fists. Compared to the typical 1.8-meter Iron Soldier, its silvery steel body stood a full 3 meters tall. The red light in its electronic eyes flickered with a human-like intensity. Damn it! How could it be here? This intelligent robot was actually terrified. Having devoured Jarvis, Ultron knew the terrifying extent of his opponent's abilities. Even Iron Man feared him, having suffered losses from them many times and unwilling to become his enemy. The plan must be moved up as quickly as possible. Also, he can't get here. Fortunately, Tony Stark gave me a heads up before this. Ultron sneered coldly, and like the hub of an intelligent network, it radiated commands to every Iron Soldier outside. Chapter 350, Unsolvable Combination, Ascension. Sokovia, the center of a chaotic battle. Countless Iron Legions battled fiercely against the gods of the Asgard, humanity possessed of technological advancements, and even their mutant counterparts. Fire, thunder, lasers, smoke, storms, earthquakes. The city center, the center of the battle, was a living hell. Thor swung his Stormbreaker fiercely, Iron Man unleashed a barrage of lasers, and the Hulk roared furiously as he charged. All around, Iron Soldiers fell, shattered, and exploded. Although the Avengers remained in name only, with a significant loss of superheroes, the three most powerful warriors remained. They represented half of the Avengers' strength. However, even with their bravery and strength, they were unable to withstand the near-constant influx of Iron Soldiers. The battle could no longer be one-sided, and the Avengers' decline became apparent. Iron Man, without the artificial intelligence Jarvis, relied entirely on manual control, and faced the imminent threat of his suit running out of energy. Thor, the god of thunder, possessed of divine blood, was now sweating profusely. His grip on his hammer was numb, yet he struggled to swing, unleashing thunder and storms. In truth, his divine bloodline had undergone a reawakening. Now, even without a divine weapon, Thor could unleash thunder, his strength having risen by a factor of 2. The problem was that his makeshift weapon, the Storm Hammer, wasn't crafted specifically for him. Therefore, he couldn't fully unleash his full potential. If I had known earlier, I would have visited the Dwarven Holy Land. Thor lamented. He had originally planned to visit the Dwarven Holy Land soon to forge a new divine weapon, but he had been constantly being dispatched by his father to guard the Nine Realms borders, and he had been putting it off. No matter what, he had to visit the Dwarven Holy Land after this, even if his father disapproved. Thor made up his mind. Although now wasn't the time to be distracted, Thor suddenly remembered something. His father hadn't been acting up lately. He'd even sent his mother back to the Witchlands, citing insufficient protection within the Divine Realm. His mind wandered. Thor, lost in thought, was tackled to the ground by an Iron Soldier. Nearby, the Hulk, incredibly powerful in hand-to-hand combat, had torn through countless Iron Soldiers with his bare hands, but facing the onslaught of laser beams, he was beginning to lose ground. Bang! Iron Man dropped from the air and unleashed a cannon, destroying the fully charged Iron Soldier and freeing Thor. Tony, think of a solution. Thor gasped. Iron Man, looking at the Iron Soldiers approaching from all directions, felt a wave of helplessness. This time, he'd really shot himself in the foot. Even if he called Captain America to negotiate peace, the situation wouldn't be salvageable with his current squad. Unless Iron Man. Tony Stark's mind flashed to another image, but he quickly shook his head, giving up hope. How could they possibly be here? What's that? Thor suddenly looked up and called out, Tony, look! Tony Stark followed suit, his gaze met with a cascade of parcels dropping from space. Meanwhile, hundreds of Iron Soldiers in the area, as if drawn to something, abandoned the three Avengers and swooped down towards one spot. But, like moths to a flame. Bang! The dense swarm of Iron Soldiers in the air, like wheat in an autumn field, was mowed down by two massive, invisible scythes. Some Iron Soldiers charging forward from the ground were uncontrollably released from the surface, slamming fiercely into the buildings on either side of the city. A man and a woman, clad in nanosuits, stepped side by side into the fray, crushing every Iron Soldiers in their path. Not a single one could get within 50 meters of them. Thor's mouth dropped open. The Iron Legion, a source of so much trouble for them, was being swept away so easily by these two? It's them. Iron Man blurted out, the playboy beneath his suit unable to conceal his excitement. Finally, someone else got to experience the feeling of being nemesis. Then, with a bang, the Green Giant stomped the ground with all his might and leaped upward, creating a circular crater in the area. He charged furiously towards the approaching magnetic force duo. But after the Iron Soldiers had been drawn away, the Hulk's rage and hatred were focused on the two most powerful men on the scene. Banner, Hulk, don't go over there. Iron Man shouted in frustration. "I'll stop it." Thor, fearing his teammates might accidentally injure the reinforcements, rushed forward. With the Hulk around, the battlefield could sometimes become truly dramatic. Seeing the enraged Hulk crashing down like a meteorite, Nian and Lorna, walking side by side, raised their hands in perfect unison. The next moment, all the metal debris within 100 meters of Nian and Luna, rebar, iron sheets, decking, screws, even the wreckage of the disintegrating Iron Soldier, trembled and flew up. Then, their raised palms clasped together, the green light lingering in their hands blending with each other. With the Hulk still in the air, all the metal debris surged toward him. His green body transformed into an oversized magnet, quickly enveloping him, with a large amount of metal still clinging to it and piling up. In about 3 seconds, a massive metal sphere, formed from the debris and with a radius of about 10 meters, hung in the air. Thor stopped in time, his scalp tingling as he stared at the Hulk trapped in the sphere. If he hadn't held his hammer handle tightly, Stormbreaker would have flown over to join the charge. Nian and Luna pressed their clasped hands downward, and the metal sphere accelerated and crashed down to the ground ahead, slamming deeply into the earth. Crack! The empty space in the city center suddenly shattered, and a metal sphere crashed down with a rumble. A bright light emanated from beneath the ground. Deep beneath the earth, ultra-modern fortresses lit up in the darkness. What is that? Iron Man and Thor were both stunned. A massive factory fortress hidden beneath a small, impoverished city. Sure enough, Nian and Lorna exchanged glances, their faces filled with realization beneath their suits. Beneath Sokovia, a secret underground fortress built by Hydra exists. Judging by its size, it must be one of the largest of Hydra's numerous fortresses. Tony Stark also understood, muttering to himself, "This is why Ultron chose this place." Boom! The shockwaves continued. The moment the metal sphere crashed into the ground, the entire city shook violently. Horrifying earthquake cracks appeared along the city's outer edges. Buzz! Every survivor in the city could clearly feel the heaviness of the elevator. The city is rising. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.